Pastor Ben Lee, and then Supervisor McClure will lead us in the pledge.
Thank you, Chairman and Board. I just want to pray for you guys for today for wisdom over everything. So, Heavenly Father, I just thank you for this board. I thank you for the wisdom that you're giving them. Lord, not just today, but the wisdom even into the next years, Lord, as things we look at, Father, that can affect this county, that you are guiding them, you are leading them, Lord, and that your hand is upon them and upon today's meeting, that you'll be with them and everything that is said, Lord, that you will give them wisdom as they lead, Lord, Pinal County, which I believe is the greatest county in Arizona. I ask all this in your precious name, Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
Please join me in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. So, first item on the agenda is call to the public, consideration and discussion of comments from the public. Those wishing to address the Pinal County Board of Supervisors may appear in person or submit written comments, which shall be submitted to the clerk of the board's office by close of business hour, 5 p.m., the day prior to the meeting. Comments shall be no more than 250 words. Actions taken as a result of the public comments will be limited to directing staff to study the matter or research the matter for further consideration and discussion at a later date. And the clerk has informed me that she has received a couple of comments. So I'm going to allow her to read those in first, and then I'll call to the public.
Call to the public comment from Doug L. I cannot attend the 8/25/21 meeting concerning the HUD proposal for funds to Pinal County, but wish to express my thoughts. I do not trust the federal government not to use this Trojan horse as a way to dictate how we run our law enforcement, zoning, and other local matters in Pinal County. The language is ambiguous, enough to allow the feds to pretty much call the shots. And considering the partisanship of the people running the DOJ, HUD, and other related bureaucracies, I would rather pay extra taxes and achieve the goals locally that this HUD grant proposes, rather than to accept funds from the feds that will come with restrictions to be revealed ignominiously at a later date. Let's please protect our local government from more federal help. Beware of Greeks bearing gifts. Next comment is from Karen and Blaze Mooney. We are very concerned with agenda item number 8 regarding the changes the federal government is requiring Pinal County as a HUD funding recipient, and feel this would not be in the best interest of Pinal County or any county for that matter. This $1.8 million is not about providing assistance to the county, and we hope you see what is behind it. This is solely about controlling the people and taking away freedom. There is no doubt that this funding plan is designed to remove the authority and excellent leadership from Sheriff Lamb. Under this plan, the agreement does not define nonviolent protest and deems to be designed purposely that way. This socialist plan could indeed turn Pinal County into what we witnessed last summer in Portland. As you recall, the 2020 protests were repeatedly referred to as nonviolent and mostly peaceful. We all know better. Shops looted, businesses and homes burned, women raped, law-abiding citizens beaten and murdered, not to mention our fine police officers being gunned down or told to stand down for this peaceful behavior. In government, nothing is ever free. Funds always come with strings attached, and this is no different. Is it worth it to take $1.8 million measly dollars in lieu of our freedom. We do not think so. We believe our constitutional rights are more important than this money. Supervisor Kavanaugh recently brought this language, and it lack of clarity to the attention of our supervisors so that they could more carefully consider the potential ratifications of acceptance of the HUD money. As you can see, the free money from the federal government comes with a lot of strings attached. Please rethink this. We cannot tolerate more of this behavior from all of these fringed groups who are hell-bent on removing the freedoms from our law enforcement and law-abiding citizens. Next comment is from Gary and George Gonzalez. I am sorry I'm not able to attend the meeting today, but I wanted to relay some comments. In regards to the redistricting, we live in Saddlebrook Ranch and don't feel that we have any common communities of interest in the Four Corners, Mount Lemmon, Navajo Nation land, or other nearby areas except Saddlebrook. With the change in census numbers, I think we should be able to add 2 to 3 new districts and make smaller districts with those of common interest, property values, and etc. And those are all the call to the public comments received by the deadline into the clerk of the board's office for today's meeting, as chairman.
Thank you. Okay, we'll start with the audience now. Is there anybody that wants to speak to call to the public? And don't, if you're here to speak on a particular agenda item that has a public hearing, we'll have you come up for that one. But this is just call to the public in general. Okay, sir. Your name, general location of your residence, and you have 3 minutes.
Okay, Lauren Balthazar, Wild Horse Estates, Florence, and I oppose the $1.8 million that's being offered for the peaceful protest. And from what I've read, it does not define peaceful protest, and it removes the authority from, for instance, Sheriff Lamb, our chief of police here, Apache Junction, wherever. Our law enforcement is losing their authority, and they won't describe what it is. How do I say that? They have limitations on how they can stop the peaceful protest if they get out of hand, but there's no definition of them getting out of hand. We've gone through this, Minneapolis, Portland, Seattle, everywhere. In the United States, Kenosha, you know, the poor kid goes in there to try to save people and help people, and now they want him for murder, while the people trying to murder him that's all okay. We don't need this stuff here. And on top of it, they're already starting in these areas, insurance policies the mortgage companies are requiring that people have these extra policies in riot areas or what is defined as unrest areas. And a lot of insurance companies in these areas, which is what we would be entailing here, aren't even going to insure to protect the mortgages. So what are these people going to do? Get high-rate insurances. My wife and I own 3 properties in Pinal County. I'm not going to be able to afford if all of a sudden they say, you know, that we have to have risk insurance because of protest or whatever that's going to happen and ensue. On top of that, we got the 11th Amendment of our Constitution. And they're going to take away the authority of the state to say what you can sue for. Let's say one of your people's wives gets her leg broken or bashed in the head, or you get bashed in the head. You're not going to be able to sue to recoup what your bills are in the hospital, and the Fed can come in and say, oh, the hospital, the insurances, nobody's going to cover it. You know, that's just something that happens because of these peaceful protests. That's the 11th Amendment, which would take away the authority of the state to make these laws on that, to make the laws on the insurances, everything. All of our authority is taken away. It's removed from us. I don't want to bring these people in here. If I want to go protest, all of us have a right to go protest if we want. But what this is going to do is attract people from California, other places, to come in and do their bidding, whatever they want to do. So I'm against it, and that's my point of view.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else with a call to the public? Sure. Come forth. Name, general location where you live, in 3 minutes. Okay? Thank you.
Good morning, Honorable Chairman, Honorable Board members. Good morning. My name is Glenn Walp. I reside in Gold Canyon, and I'm the president of the Adobe organization. Just a general statement. When Adobe was organized back in 1989, they had a very strong principle, and that principle was to have open dialogue with the county regarding any issue that may occur within the county. And that system, if you will, continued through the years. Even about 2008 and 9, they had a Gold Canyon Review Committee that wasn't just made up of Adobe, but it was a good microcosm of the community who had input. Obviously, the county gave the final decisions on that, and everybody knew that. But it was an excellent working relationship. Within the last recent history, Adobe has run into a problem. I have tried on multiple occasions to try to set up dialogue with Mr. Surdy, and I was told that the only people that he was going to be dealing with is GCCI. Adobe has no problem with GCCI. They have the right to exist. And the one statement that was given to me, you better get to them quick because we're moving fast, and that's a quote. I did meet with GCCI and found out we didn't agree with many of the things. And the Adobe represents, between Adobe and the new formed alliance, between our communications of emails and contacts, over 5,000 people in Gold Canyon. GCCI, they're just starting. They have a much more limited group of people. And so we're asking, as the citizens of Gold Canyon, that we wish to have our seat at the table. Just listen to us, hear what we have to say. Ultimately, again, the decision rests with the county. But not just GCCI. I know you had a resolution, and resolutions are resolutions, and I have no problem with that. My understanding is you have to fill out the proper forms. I didn't know that, and if that's my fault, then I'm guilty of that. But we, too, want to be heard. Adobe wants to be heard, not just GCCI. They do not represent Adobe. They do not represent Adobe. And my understanding of the alliance, they do not represent the alliance either. So we feel we need our background music. We feel that we need our seat at the table, and we're just asking for open dialogue, that we have that opportunity, and we're listened to equally, logically, so our input is given. And I am not here to accuse, I'm not here to cause discord, just respectfully asking that we have our seat at the table. And I thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. No, that's not the decorum that's held here. You're allowed to speak, voice your opinion, and take it from there. In that public comment, Mr. Surdy, your name was mentioned. You do have an opportunity, if you'd like, to respond anytime in a public comment. If you reference a supervisor by name, that supervisor will have an opportunity to speak.
I would like
Entirely up to you.
I would like to speak on that, and that's absolutely untrue. I've even hosted in my conference room GCCI and Adobe at the same time, offering to mend fences however it needs to be. And I will meet with anybody at any time. I'll meet with every citizen individually if need be. So I don't know where that has come from. I do commend GCCI for going through the proper channels and They've been working on this for over a year, and so if the leadership of Adobe is not, able to do that, then you should start now so that you could get caught up. And the same way with the Homeowners Alliance, if they want to be recognized, I don't think there's only one organization can be recognized. It could be 3 or 4 if you want to. So just go through the proper motions and get there. And everybody will be recognized. And my office is open. It's not even my office. It belongs to the people. My conference room is open. And that all of those assets would be available to everybody that lives in District 5. I also wanted to talk about one other thing, if everybody's through. So we'll come back to me.
You're looking for a personal point of privilege then?
Yes.
Okay, after this. All right, is there anybody else from the public with a public comment, not specific to a agenda item? Sure, come forward.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is Mary Ann Fries, and I am here because I'm concerned about the August 6th resolution regarding the Gold Canyon Community Incorporated. I have worked for municipal government for over 20 years and had many duties, including preparing and doing minutes for meetings such as this. I don't understand the resolution for GCCI. I've done proclamations, but never a resolution as this type. Does that mean you will not allow the opportunity for residents of Gold Canyon to oppose or make any suggestions, as it seems you will only consider ideas and only work with this organization, GCCI? I feel this resolution takes away our constitutional rights of freedom of speech unless we are members of this organization. And I would ask that you prepare a motion to repeal this resolution. I guess you are very familiar with GCCI and in favor of their suggestions, although I feel they do not represent Gold Canyon, as most do not agree with them, nor do we want them to decide what to do in Gold Canyon. I'm in favor of many residents of Gold Canyon that I'm sure they agree, and as probably you know now, that Gold Canyon Home Alliance Incorporated, as well as Adobe, better suit our needs for representation. Thank you very much. I'm not a good speaker, but I did the best I could.
You did fine. Anyone else?
I have a question.
No, wait, sir. If you have to come forth. Name, general location where you live. You have 3 minutes.
Well,
This is public comment, period. So,
okay, but there's a consent item BB that deals with this. Should
well, when
wait
I get
till
to
then?
consent items, if you want to have that pulled, I'll be glad to pull it.
Okay,
I'll offer that to the audience before we move forward on consent items.
so I can come up and talk.
Okay, then that's okay. That's fine.
Or do you want me to do it now?
We'll call you up when we get to consent item BB.
Okay.
Was that what it was, BB?
That's what it was.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. Thank you, everyone. Oh, Mr. Ruelas. Good morning.
Good morning.
Name, general location, and 3 minutes.
Alberto Ravelis, resident of Gold Canyon, longtime attendee for some 26, 27 years at these meetings. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am speaking personally, but I am also a person who was referred to through organization. I'm the president of Gold Canyon Community, Inc. We are a group of people who are dedicated to the betterment of our community. I have served many years, probably am the longest term member attendee at Adobe. I am a previous president of Adobe. I'm a previous editor of Adobe, and I am the person who initiated a follow-up meeting after the July 1 meeting at the Gold Canyon Methodist Church, because I asked our supervisor, who agreed that the public needs an opportunity to be heard. I take advantage of being here as part of my civic duty at virtually every Board of Supervisors. I am a problem solver, and I am proud of my civic engagement in Gold Canyon over the years. And quite frankly, I resent the implication that somehow it is unfair for citizens to get together to advocate for their community. I am the person who initiated invitation to Adobe, to SALT, to Gold Canyon Business Association, and the newly forming Homeowners Alliance, because I do believe that democracy should be open, transparent, but it should be based on truthfulness and accountability. Mr. Chairman, there have been implications, untruthful characterizations, and I hope that other speakers will dedicate themselves to engaging with the board, but based on truthfulness and not on fear-mongering and lack of truth. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. All right, is there anyone else from the audience on public comment? Well, what, come up, give me your name, and ask the question, and then we'll figure it out.
Debbie Presentine, and it's regarding PZC 004-21.
That's item number
I guess
8?
that's 7 or 8.
7 or 8?
Yeah.
That I will have you come up when we get to that item.
That point in time?
At that point in time.
Okay. Can I speak on GCCI's comments about the resolution? Am I allowed to do that? The resolution
Yes.
that they were
Okay,
referring
this
to?
is under public comment. This
Okay.
is not an agenda item that we're voting on.
No, it's not. It's a resolution, and when they were talking about Resolution 080421, the GCCI resolution, but that was submitted on April 25th, I believe it, April 4th, August 8th, August 4th, sorry.
Okay.
This resolution says that it's been in communication with the public and of Gold Canyon. None of us knew anything about what was going on until July 1st, and all of a sudden we were hit with all of this stuff. That's why there were so many people that were upset about it. That's why we have 1,700 petitions to stop it just in the recent time, because we're not receiving information. They're supposed to, according to this resolution, they're supposed to communicate with us and let us know what's going on, get the input from the public. They're not doing that. None of us. And that's why apparently all of us are upset, is because we're in the dark with all of these, even the other resolution with SALC. And the planning that SALC has, the master plan that SALC presented to you guys. None of us knew about that. And then there's also this resolution, this PC 044, the 02, the one just changing it from residential to master plan. None of us knew about that. So that's what I think we're all concerned about, is not having input. We're not having a voice. We're being just ramroded through all of this, and people are saying, well, that's how it is. So that was what I wanted to refer to that, because that's what I'm hearing from most of my neighbors, is that, when did it happen?
Okay.
Okay?
Okay. We'll take that under advisement.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Are we done with public comment? Okay, seeing none, seeing no more, moves us to item number 2 on the agenda, presentations of certificates of service.
Mr. Chairman.
Oh, I'm
Remember I
sorry.
wrote- yeah.
You're right. I'll
So-
allow you a personal point of privilege.
So we had 3 people talk on HUD, and I saw Sheriff Lamb in the lobby, so I assume he's listening on one of the monitors out there. I would like to get his opinion on when it said that it usurped his authority, if he could give a report to the board on what he thinks of that whole situation on would it take his authority to enforce the law if he could just give us a report.
Okay. If you'll see on the agenda, the very last item I have on agenda will be an opportunity for the supervisors to ask for those types of reports or agenda items for discussion at future board meetings. So that would be a great example of where we can use that. That's going to be at the end of all of our meetings going forward, so that everybody, and I'll talk a little bit more on it when we get to that item on the agenda. But
Thank you.
okay, I'll take that. Okay, now can I get to item number 2? Try and move along here.
Thank you.
Presentation certificates of service to employees for 20 and 25 years. Mr. Liu.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and board members, and thank you. Today we have the fortunate to be able to celebrate 3 employees. One of them is not going to be present, but I wanted to honor her. Her name is Tracy Hampton. She works in the recorder's office. She's been serving with Pinal County for 20 years. She started back in 2001 as a deputy clerk. 2 was promoted 2 years later to a deputy clerk 3, and then in 2006 to a deputy recording supervisor. So congratulations, Tracy, and thank you. And then we have 2 who are going to be present today, and I could state their name and give their history as they walk up. One is from the County Attorney's Office and Victim Services, Yvonne Gomez. She started in 1996 as a health aide and was quickly promoted to Court Service Secretary 1 with the Juvenile Court, and then a year later promoted to a Secretary 2, and then in 2003 promoted to a Victims' Rights Technician, and then in 2006 promoted to a Victim Advocate. And I believe County Attorney Kent Volkmer is also here to present the award, 25 years of service. Thank you, Yvonne.
I think, do you want to do one, or I'd like them to come down too, if that's okay. Would you like the board to come down? Board, are you willing to come down and take a photo? It doesn't need to be just me. This
Why don't we get both of them done? Let's go ahead and get both of them, then we'll do the whole photo thing after that. And Mr. Volkmer, you certainly can comment if you'd like about your employee.
I appreciate the opportunity.
Then we'll let the employee rebut.
Ken Volkmer, County Attorney. I appreciate the opportunity. Board, you're all aware of how important our employees are. They're the ones that are doing the work day to day. And I actually knew Yvonne before I took office. I worked with her in my personal capacity as a private attorney before that. She was a pleasure to work with then. I was very honored to inherit her. She does a tremendous job for our office. Her position are one of those positions that really nobody appreciates until they've been a part of the community or the criminal justice system. Because as a victim advocate, what you have to do is you have to sort of explain the system to people. Most people aren't familiar with the way it works. There's tons of court hearings. There's a gazillion documents to get set down. You're dealing with people really in crisis, dealing with the toughest time that they've really ever experienced, except maybe for the loss of a loved one. And then she is our advocate. She is the person that comes forward and says, hey, this is what's going to happen. This is the way it works. This is how your voice gets heard. So she becomes this navigator in a completely complex environment. She's been doing it for 20-plus years, we've had her in juvenile for quite some time, where she's even working with then, kind of trying to deal with the parents, because it's a really foreign issue, because it's not even you, it's your kids. It has been in dealing with kids, which is a different system. So our county is absolutely blessed to have Ms. Gomez. I will tell you, my office is blessed to have Ms. Gomez. And I want to thank the board and the county manager for giving us the opportunity to embarrass her a little bit and bring her up, because she deserves it. All of these people work behind the scenes, and they make our community what it is, and I appreciate the opportunity to shower just a little bit of praise. She deserves much more, but I appreciate the opportunity.
Well, and that's why I wanted you to speak to it, County Attorney, because I think people really don't understand the complexity of so many of the jobs that we have here in Pinal County. So congratulations, Ms. Gomez. Who's the next one, Leo?
Thank you. From Pinal County Sheriff's Office, we have Jason Agresta. He started back in 1996 as a detention officer, and then a year later was promoted to deputy, and then in 2005 promoted to corporal, and in 2007 promoted to sergeant. I believe the sheriff is here as well to present.
Come forth. Come on, you don't get to stand back there in the doorway.
You're much better looking, right? Thanks.
We will. Okay.
So this is a certificate of service presented to Jason D. Agresta. He is one of our sergeants in the Casa Grande area. Been with the agency for 25 years. A wealth of experience and knowledge. Does his job amazing. Guys love working for him. He really is an embodiment of the Pinal County Sheriff's Office. So, in grateful appreciation for your dedication and commitment of service to the citizens of Pinal County for 25 years as of July 29th. So, thank you.
Is that it? Okay, supervisors, let's go down there and show them our appreciation.
Okay, here we go. And right here, 3, 2, 1. One more, 3, 2, 1. There we go. Very nice.
All right, well, thank you, and thank you to those employees for the years of service. Really appreciate it. Brings us to item number 3, County Manager's Report. Information only. Mr. Liu.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just wanted to give you, the board, and the public an update. We met earlier this week with Boeing and with Mike Hutchinson, who is a former city manager of Mesa, who was there and helped to shepherd Boeing landing there in Falcon Field in Northeast Mesa. They build the Apache helicopters there. And it was important for them to visit with us because they do flyovers and testing of production and development of those helicopters here over the county. As well, they have 500 of their employees that work there that live here in Pinal County. And so they're offering to give us, the board, and some Pinal County members a tour of their facility. So we'll work on scheduling that. But one of the remarkable things that occurred in that discussion is Boeing's ability to partner with the Mesa community colleges and with the Mesa public schools in order to create and develop programs to train the students for the jobs of the future. And so we're going to work closely with them and our school superintendent and the board and some of our public schools in the area, Apache Junction, Queen Creek, Santan, to help develop them and do that model here in Pinal County.
Great. Any questions or for our county manager at this point? Okay, seeing none. Brings us to item number 4, Purchasing Division for August 25th, 2021. Shannon McBride. Ms. McBride.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Vice Chairman, and members of the board. I'm Shauna McBride, your purchasing manager for Pinal County. And this is your purchasing report for August 25th, 2021. So first up today, the board is requested to approve the following new contract awards. We recommend contracts be awarded for our specialty legal services to the following suppliers: Greenberg Tourig, LLP, Gust Rosenfield, PLC, Jennings Strauss and Salmon, PLC, Kutak Rock, LLP. This contract is used by the County Attorney's Office. Next, the board is requested to approve the following contract amendments. First, we recommend approval of Amendment 3 to exercise the optional extension period with the following suppliers for human resource investigative services: Investigative Research, Inc., and Trayan and Associates, and this contract is used by the Human Resources Department. Next, we recommend approval of Amendment 3 to exercise the optional extension period with the following suppliers for our maintenance, repair, and operating supplies, including generator services contracts. Advanced Mechanical Services, American Refrigeration Supplies, Climatech, Coolidge Ace Hardware, Day Auto Supply, Dubs Plumbing and Supply, Florence True Value, Galaxy Service Company, Maricopa Ace Hardware, Mel's Auto, Napa Auto Parts Marana, Prime Generator Solutions, Refrigeration Supplies Distributor, and Shaw's Interiors. This contract is used countywide, but is primarily used by the Facilities Department. We also recommend approval of Amendment 2 to exercise the optional extension period with U.S. Corrections, LLC, for prisoner transport services. This contract is used by the Sheriff's Office. Last, for our amendments, we recommend approval of amendments with the following suppliers to correct a clerical error on the contract Exhibit B, which was the maximum allowable rate schedule. A Secure Towing, Apache Sands Towing, Catalina Towing and Recovery, DNS Thompson Towing Services, Elite Towing, Johnny's Auto Repair and Towing, Night Towing, Phoenix Metro Towing, Secured Right Towing, Star Towing Services, Absolute Towing and Recovery, Axle Towing and Impound, CL King Towing, Eddie's Towing, Hughes Towing, K&R Towing and Management, Mammoth Towing and Service, Santan Valley Towing, Southwest 24-Hour Towing, and Stay Up Towing. This contract is used by the Sheriff's Office, and there's no cost to the county for this service. Last on our report today, the board is hereby notified of the following cooperative purchases that were made with a value between $100,000 and $250,000. Purchase order 245605 in the amount of $150,779 to Danson Constructions for demolition services at our old juvenile detention facility, requested by our Facilities Department. Purchase order 245530 in the amount of $109,952 to SHI International Corp. For a Communico, and this was requested by our library district. Purchase order 245738 in the amount of $108,000 to Westlaw for our Westlaw subscription for legal research, and this was requested by the County Attorney's Office. And purchase order 245897 in the amount of $122,907.68 to Santan Ford for 4 2022 Transit Cargo Connect Cargo vans requested by Facilities and the Fleet Department. And that's your purchasing report for August 25th, 2021.
Okay. Any questions for Ms. McBride at this time? Seeing none, board's pleasure.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the Purchasing Division report dated August 25th, 2021.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Okay. Consent items. All items indicated by an asterisk will be handled by a single vote as part of the consent agenda unless a board member, county manager, or a member of the public objects at the time the agenda item is called. And so, real quick, I just do want to make an announcement because of the hearing office, the civil hearing office items that are on here. We will have a separate attorney on the line for that. So, clerk, when you have her connected, Susan Goodwin, I believe, is her name.
Yes, she is on the line now.
She is on the line now? Okay, very good. So, anybody on the board want anything pulled?
Mr. Chairman, I'd
Yep.
like M, N is in Nancy, AZ,
What is it? BZ?
Alpha Zebra,
Okay. AZ.
BA, BB, and BC.
BC. So let me just make sure I have them right. Okay. M, N, AZ, DA.
Bravo Alpha,
Oh, BA.
Bravo, Bravo.
Bravo, and BC. Bravo, Cat, Charlie. Okay. All right. Anybody else on the board?
Wait a minute, say those again.
M, N, A, Z, B, A, B, B, and B, C.
AZ.
Everybody good on the board? County Manager's Office, do you have anything you want pulled? And young lady had, was it BB that you wanted pulled? Where's the? Yeah, didn't you ask to have an item pulled for? Who was it? Somebody from the public asked to have something pulled.
It was items.
And we've covered it. It's BB. Okay. Okay. Anybody else from the audience have anything they want removed? Sir? Yeah. What item did you want pulled? Oh, you don't want it pulled. Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
I don't think he understands them.
I don't think so.
Go ahead. Sir, your item will be heard.
Okay. When we say pull it, we mean pull it for discussion. So that's not to not hear it. It is to hear it. Okay. Everybody good? Any other questions? Can I get a motion?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we approve consent items A through, how far do we go?
P. BP.
BK
P. P.
through P? No, BK. A through BK.
I have BP.
Okay, BP. Then I'm short. Okay, A through BP minus MN AZ BA, BB, and BC.
Okay. Everybody good with that? Do I have a second?
I would second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. Takes us to M. I believe will be the first one.
Good morning, Chairman, members of the board. Rolanda Cephas, Housing Director.
Okay. Rolanda. The question, Mr. Kavanaugh?
Good morning.
Good morning.
So this is a HUD agreement, different from the one we last looked at. And this agreement was written by a company called Nelrod, is that correct?
Correct.
And who is Nelrod? How did we become associated with these guys?
So Nelrod, they are a company that provides services such as updating of the administration plans, our public housing plans. They update leases. So they are compliant. They follow the compliance of HUD regulations. And what we did was we partnered with Nelrod to provide updates to our annual plans. Our plans kind of needed to be looked at because there were some recent updates with HUD regulations that required to be updated. And so we just partnered with Nelrod to take a look at our plans for both programs and our lease agreements to kind of bring them up to date with new changes with the regulations.
Okay, and educate me, does the board approve the contract with Nelrod, or is that something that's solely inside your department?
That's within a department that we use Nelrod and companies like that, Neacham, Nan McKay, different organizations, because we receive training through these different organizations on compliance with HUD regulations.
You receive training through Nelrod?
Yes, that's one of the ones we receive training through.
I looked at the Nelrod website. The second video on that shows a big extravaganza in in Las Vegas with Elvis impersonators. It was pretty interesting. So I'm going to go, there was 309 pages, and we read every page to this agreement. On the very last page, or close to the last, it says, notice, NELROD has made its best efforts to comply with regulations, laws, federal, local policies, and I'll skip the middle part. It does not offer legal advice on matters or render legal opinions. We recommend this policy be reviewed by the Housing Authority's General Counsel and Attorney prior to approval by the board. Has it been approved? Has this been run through the County Attorney's Office?
Because there were no HUD regulations are what they are, so that's something that we can't change. And that's really what we had NELROD to look at, any updates to anything that was HUD regulations and required to be in our administrative plan. And there were changes to the rule on VAWA, the Violence Against Women's Act, disabilities and things like that. So those things are required by HUD, so they have to be in the plan.
Okay. When I read it, so we were looking at the 309 pages compared to federal law. And so there were some things, I'm not an attorney, but I couldn't find in federal law a few of the items that were contained in this. So I think it's probably a wise idea to have the county attorney look this over. There are provisions about, there seemingly, in my view, conflicting statements about criminal history. We should get a criminal history, but then we shouldn't report it to the potential landlord. And then perhaps it's in federal law that it says here, the family may be eligible for assistance despite the fact that no declaration or documentation of eligible status has been submitted. So what that's, I think, saying, and you can, if you know, let me know. If you need to research it, fine. Is that saying that if someone crosses the border or is in the United States illegally with no documentation, no Social Security, no nothing, they would still be then eligible? Is that the NELROD document consistent with law, or do you know?
No. So what happens when it comes to an illegal immigrant, if they have an eligible family member, so if they have children that are born in the United States, that child would qualify for the program. So the assistance would be based prorated for that household. The child would receive the assistance, but the prorate would only be attached to the child for that assistance. It wouldn't provide assistance to the parent.
Okay. All right. Well, I appreciate your input and clarification. And my only question is, we just paid $108,000 for Westlaw. Maybe they'll use it on this, and maybe they'll compare the documents and make sure we're following law. Okay. So thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. Board's pleasure on item M.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
I would move that we table the item until the next meeting to allow the county attorney to compare this contract with actual law, as recommended by NELROD.
I have a motion. I'm going to ask a question. Is this time sensitive in one meeting? Rolanda?
It's not time sensitive. We look at usually updating our plans around this time. We did put it out for public comment, so we've already gone through that process. So as soon as we obtain approval from the board, we will put it into policy with our department.
Okay. All right. Well, I have a second to table this.
Chairman, if we can change that motion to continue.
I was just going to go there, yeah. To a date certain?
Yes, to the next board meeting. Is that correct, Supervisor Capel?
Are you okay with that?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay, so that's going to be
The motion is to continue to
September the 1st.
So I would make a motion that we continue this item to September 1st.
Okay. I have a second to that.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Okay, thank you. Brings us to item N. Audrey? There you are. I thought I'd seen you.
Sorry, Chairman Miller. I was waiting for Supervisor Kavanaugh to say why he pulled it.
Oh, well, I pulled it because this is an example of good government cooperation. If we hadn't helped the town of Mammoth and come up with an agreement through our fine animal control director, we would have caused Mammoth to create another animal control department on their own. So by doing this, we used our resources, partnered with Mammoth. It's a good deal for the county and the city of Mammoth, and it's a good example of saving taxpayer money. So I just want to commend you and your staff and the county manager's office for putting this together.
Chairman Miller, thank you, Supervisor Kavanaugh. I just want to say that I can't take all the credit. I have to also thank Rodney States, who is the one who drafted the IGA, and the town of Mammoth, working with their county or city manager's department. This was a very unique IGA because the town of Mammoth does not have a lot of funding. So we came up with a plan that would fit their financial needs and also serve them with animal control services. And you'll be seeing the town of Kearney next. So,
excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Board's pleasure, unless there's any other questions. Board's pleasure on this one?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we adopt item N as presented.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. Thank you. AZ. Where is that baby? There it is. So, Mr. Keller and Mr. Wolf.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Scott Johnson,
Morning.
County Attorney's Office. I'm with Amber American from the Assessor's Office, here to answer any questions regarding item AZ.
Okay.
Thank you. So we received this, Mr. Chairman, thank you. We received the information the board did on this, and it was a recommended letter of agreement, I think they call it, to lower the value, the tax value of the target location in Casa Grande. We didn't have any further background information until we received an email, I think, late last night or this morning. And my question on this and my comment is more for the benefit of the public. Why would we reduce a tax value on a building from 8.6 to 2.6 million? And I think the public would want to know why we came up with this $6 million. I got the answer this morning in an email, but would you explain to the public so we know that we're doing this fairly and by law?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Supervisor Kavanaugh. I am going to let Amber American answer that question because it is an effect of a system within the Assessor's Office that allows that to take place. So are you comfortable answering that question? Okay.
We value on a mass appraisal system.
Give us your name just
Amber
for the record.
Marroquin.
Okay.
Sorry.
Thank you, Amber.
We value on a mass appraisal system, so we have to do it in bulk, and we use a cost approach. So we take whatever is there on the property, we value it by replacement costs new, then we do a less depreciation value, and then we adjust it by what's happening in the market. And because we're a year and a half to 2 years ahead of time, we have to use sales that happened a while back, and then we add a land value to that value. So when someone appeals or they file a lawsuit and they bring in information that shows that because of sales that are happening now or because of the store being dark, the value should be at this, then we try to negotiate and say, okay, yes, we can adjust this based on what's happening now.
And that's what happened. In this case, the store was empty.
Correct.
And closed. And so they said, hey, we can't sell this item. Is that correct?
Correct.
And so and under ordinary circumstances, if you saw a diminishment in condition of the building, you can only reduce it so much per year on your own. Is that correct?
Right.
And so they did their thing and they filed a claim or a letter, a lawsuit, and then that's how we arrived. And this is appropriate, and there's nothing untoward here. Okay, good.
I would just add on to that, Supervisor Kavanaugh, that it's a pretty good deal. There was a comp sale in Chandler that we basically gave the same amount for an empty building. So for the county, it's a good deal.
Yeah, okay, good. So now the public is informed. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay. Any other questions on this item? Seeing none, board's pleasure.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve item AZ as presented.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. Thank you. Brings us to BA. Scott, you still there? Oh, there you are.
Come on, Scott
Okay,
Johnson,
there you
County
are.
Attorney's Office, with Sarah Smith, Supervisor from Code Compliance. Happy to answer any questions you have.
So I expected that one of the owners or occupants of the residence was going to be here. Is either Jose Luis or Nana Esperanza here? Okay.
Do we have anybody in the, oh, we're going to check the overflow room real quick.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I have a comment on this. In the background, you can see a new house that's been built on the other side of that wall, and people in Randolph are proud of their community, and these issues come up. The Public Works this past year did a cleanup, and they had a fire out here, and so we're working hard to improve the conditions there in Randolph. We're looking into things like fire hydrants and so on. And I think the concern here is both for health and safety and for appearance. But I had understood that these folks were going to come and kind of give their side of the story, but apparently we don't have them. So if you want to just give a brief synopsis of what's going on here, and then we'll move on.
So starting back in, back in October of 2019, we received a report from an anonymous complainant of items and trash, scrap, and debris on this property. Code Compliance worked or attempted to work with them since that time and eventually brought the case to hearing in November of 2020. It appears that they did not appear for that hearing, and they were entered into default because of that and fined $1,400. So there's a $1,400 fine along with the two violations, alleged violations from Code Compliance on that property. So right now we're asking the board respectfully to, or at least direction on what to do with this case, whether we want to go to court or not. And we're asking the board to approve this so that we can file a lawsuit and move this case forward.
Okay. Mr. Kavanaugh, did you have something?
I have no comments.
Okay.
Any?
Okay. Board's pleasure on this one, unless there's somebody else has a question. All right.
Mr. Chairman, I'd move that we approve item BA as presented.
Okay. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. Thank you. BB?
Mr. Dickinson?
Go ahead, Scott, if you
I
want
know
to
there was,
start this.
Scott Johnson, County Attorney's Office again for item BB. And I do believe there is a neighbor here that would like to speak. I think he made his, he was trying to speak during call to the public and then came back up. So
Okay.
I'm here to answer any questions you might have. I know he wants a chance to speak, so if
Okay.
you'd like to hear from him, that's fine. Totally the board's
That's the
pleasure.
gentleman in the back there. Go ahead, come forth. Your name and your residence location, or
My name's Greg Mahoney, and my residence location is 539 East Mountain View Place. I'm right across the street from Daniel Dickinson.
okay.
Boy, I just wanted to say that Mr. Dickinson and another occupant and her dogs have resided continuously since November 1st, 2020. They're using illegal electric power only by a gasoline-powered generator, like a camping generator. They have an unpermitted water hookup and unknown sewage. I don't know whatever happens with their sewage. And that's for over 10 months now. It's imposing noise day and night with that generator going, creating pollution, altering the existing structures. They've regraded the lot. They've modified the existing structure there. And the place looks really junky. It's got trash bags in front of it and trailers, used cars, stuff like that. And this has been going on for over 320 days now. So I just wanted to say that Pinal County Code Compliance has kind of demanded politically correct treatment of this situation, but it's really kind of ignored most of the law-abiding neighbors who have to kind of put up with this. Every time we've complained or said anything, they're like, let us deal with it. We'll get to it sooner or later. And I'm very glad that they're finally at a point where it seems to me like they've kind of exhausted all options with this resident. And I just want to say that it affects the entire neighborhood, me and everybody there. I might be the only one complaining, but there's other people to talk to me about it. And when I leave this meeting today, I'll go to a home which I spent my entire working life savings on. And it's a home I've maintained and improved and tried to bring up in value. But it's a home that I no longer take solace or comfort in. I can't even walk out my door without hearing generators or dogs or whatever. And when I get out of my car, when I go home today, there will be that endless generator noise. And when I look across the street, there's going to be an old trailer with people and barking dogs in it. There will be an old water tank shack that these people have illegally modified, because you're not supposed to modify any existing structure without a permit, for marijuana growth. They got bare dirt lot full of tall weeds, old boat, junk cars, trash bags, filling up a trailer. And I have nowhere else to go. That's my place, my home, right across the street from this. And it's affected this neighborhood. Nobody walks around that cul-de-sac. Nobody talks to me anymore. Everybody's afraid to go there, including the animals, because of the generator noise. And I would just like to say that this once quiet street has been degraded by a proven criminal who should be held accountable for his actions. And that hopefully as a deterrent to other people. It seems that there's more and more cases like this now in Oracle. And nobody wants to have a neighbor that feels like their ambitions are more important than all the existing residents in the neighborhood. I guess that's pretty much my speech. Thank you for letting me say it.
Absolutely.
Should I put my card up
Just
here?
put it there. That'll be fine. Thank you. And I'll just say that I think in general, the length of time on a lot of these projects is because we do try to work towards compliance. I mean, that's always been the theme in the past. We give plenty of opportunity for people to come into compliance, and if you'll validate that for me, somebody.
Yeah, I can say, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, and Mr. Mahoney, we do, and in this case, Code Compliance was attempting to work with these people, with this homeowner over and over and over again to try to get them to come into compliance, and we wanted to afford them every opportunity. I'd also like to say it's good to see a lot of times the board sees the property owner, but you don't see how it affects the neighboring or the neighbors, right? We just don't get that kind of involvement. So it's important to understand that it's not just the property owner; it affects everybody around them. And it was good to hear from Mr. Mahoney. So that's about all I have.
Any other questions, comments?
Mr. Chairman, I expected Mr. Dickinson to be here today. I spoke with him on the phone last night, but he's not here. And his argument would be the primary use issue. He tried to get electricity so he wouldn't have to have a generator, and it's a kind of a property rights issue. And I'm here to represent the complainant and all the constituents. So this gentleman has an argument that he bought the property and he couldn't get into compliance because it didn't have an address to get electricity. So he did get water, but no electricity. So I feel bad for everyone involved in this, and I know this will likely go to court and get resolved.
And just to follow up, Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Kavanaugh, we don't. We tried to get him to go through the process. It just kind of dragged along, and we've been trying and trying. It just kind of got long, and we kept getting the same answer over and over. So that's kind of why we're here, and we have to kind of move this case forward. But yeah, that's about it.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Board's pleasure.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve item BB as presented.
I have a motion. Do I have a second? Second. I have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. Thank you. And I believe it brings us to BC. There's old Rodney.
Morning, Chairman, members
Morning.
of the board. Rodney States, Deputy County Attorney. Here to answer any questions or.
Any questions?
Thank you. Could you summarize this? In our packet, we only received, I think, pictures, and I requested additional information, which we got late last night, so that the rest of the board may only have the pictures and have no other further explanation of this.
Certainly. Chairman, Supervisor Kavanaugh, essentially this case was started, based upon a neighbor, complaint about some of the issues going on back in July of 2020. Since then, the code compliance officer that was assigned has tried to, as we do in the other cases, as you'd mentioned, work with the property owner to try and gain compliance via, some of the least restrictive means initially, and unfortunately, compliance was never obtained. The issues on the property, as you can see from the photographs, those basically reflect what the code compliance issues are, which is the storing of scrap, metal, tires, lumber, miscellaneous material, and some of it may be debris, just all over the property. Complaint was filed in the hearing office in March of this year. The property owner did not appear, as sometimes happens in the hearings, and a default judgment was found against the property owner for this one violation, which is the outside storage of debris and miscellaneous materials. So a $700 fine was issued. No payments have been made on that fine, and we're therefore asking the board to allow us to go forward with the next stage of the process through the Superior Court and what may follow from there in order to resolve the issue. I'll also note that the neighbor, part of their complaint had involved a beehive that was in the midst of that debris, and so, potentially a health and safety issue there as well.
Any questions?
No, I just have a comment. The code officers did a nice job documenting and articulating everything, all their efforts here. So nice job, code compliance folks.
I'll pass that credit on to Officer T.K. Hunter, who's present.
Just pass it right over. Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
There's a slight typo there. It's actually District 4. I didn't catch that. I didn't catch that earlier, but I just looked at the address.
It says 1, and it's actually...
So, in the pictures.
Yeah, it's in Eloy.
So it's in my district, but I didn't catch that, but anyway. But thank you, TK. And for bringing it up, Supervisor Kavanaugh. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
No.
Hearing and seeing none. Board's pleasure.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve item BC as presented.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Chairman, if we can include that District 4 language on that item so that we can update the agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve item BC as presented with the exception of changing it from Supervisor District 1 to Supervisor District 4.
I'll second that because I didn't want you to get all the stuff today.
All right. With that correction. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. Thank you, guys. Okay. So I'm going to recess real quick here. Buddy. I'm going to recess the Board of Supervisors meeting and open up the Pinal County Flood Control District Board meeting. Mr. Watermaker is here. It looks like all we have is consent items, if I'm correct. So, item number 1 is consent items. All items indicated by an asterisk will be handled by a single vote as part of the consent agenda unless a board member, county manager, or a member of the public objects at the time the agenda item is called. This is for the Pinal County Flood Control District. Anybody want anything pulled?
Item B.
B. Okay. Anything else? County manager, anybody from the public? Seeing none, board's pleasure.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we approve item A through C minus B.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. B. Mr. Watermaker. And Mr. Kavanaugh.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, Mr. Wanamaker, item B, I was looking at the property, and we were trying to determine what portion of these improvements are on public property and what are on private property. Are there any on private property?
Good morning, Chairman, members of the board. Thank you, Kavanaugh, for the question. All of these improvements will be on private property that we are going to acquire through our project process. We're going to obtain easements for all the improvements.
And will, Mr. Chairman?
Sure, go ahead.
And so will those easement authorizations be obtained prior to the work?
Yes, that's correct. Prior to actual construction, the easements will be obtained, and they will be brought to this board for acceptance and approval for each property.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions?
No.
Okay, thank you. Board's pleasure.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we approve item number B.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay.
Nay.
4-1. Thank you. Okay, I'm adjourning the Pinal County Flood Control District meeting, and we will resume the Pinal County Board of Supervisors. Am I in the right place here? Item 7? Make sure I keep everything going. This item does have a public hearing component to it, but we will have a presentation by Evan or Mr. Chow. Evan? It's a discussion, approval, or disapproval of zoning ordinance number 2021 PZC 004. Text amendment. Dash 21.
Board of Supervisors, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vice Chairman, good morning. My name is Evan Evangelopoulos. I'm with the Planning Division in Pinal County. And today I will be presenting the Multi-Purpose Community Master Plan Zoning District Text Amendment, the first 3 sections of this chapter. And it's a county-wide text amendment. The applicant is the Arizona State Land Department. Only 3 sections of the chapter are being modified. And in general, as a summary, the text is amended to address minimum number of certain characteristics for large multi-purpose developments, type of central components in such developments. Such developments require a central component. Types of developments that function as integrated communities. That's another requirement in the code for all the elements to function as an integrated community. Extent of comprehensive plan employment land use designations included within a project. That goes down from 75 to 50%. I'll show you in a second. Distance from certain types of roadways. minimum required number of different elements, distance of industrial from adjacent residential, and other changes that the Board of Supervisors might recommend. So just as an overview of the schedule, we had a neighborhood meeting on July 1st. We had a Board of Supervisors work session on July 7th. The Commission public hearing was on July 15th. The Board of Supervisors public hearing is today, obviously, and if the text amendment is approved, then it will become effective on September 24th. So these are the changes that are proposed to the current chapter, to the current zoning chapter. Again, this is an existing chapter. There are proposals to amend the first three sections, which I will present over here. Standards from first one is the option to choose between 3 out of 4 elements, major elements, within a proposed MPCMP zoning district. We're adding here at least 3 of the following, 4 that you see over there. Open space and industrial is included as a type of essential component. Employment centers are also added as integrated communities. Then here's the 50%, the reduction from 75 to 50% of the total project area that can be employment. That means more flexibility to include commercial and residential. And then this is some bigger changes here. At least 1 mile from a single-family residential development is eliminated. And so any proposal within this zoning district will have to be 1 mile of a proposed existing high-capacity roadway interchange. And again, we see the central component factor. Any proposal will have to contain a central component comprised of regional, sporting, recreational, open space, entertainment, amusement, cultural, or industrial, or transportation facility. Now, also a proposed development will have to include 3 of the following elements: coordinated residential, commercial, industrial, or public facility. And this is something that we added with a recommendation of the Planning and Zoning Commission. Any industrial use must be located at least 660 feet from the property boundary of an existing residential use. Now, 660 feet, just to give you a perspective, is from the intersection of Butte here all the way to Circle K. So that's about 660 feet. And the 2,000 contiguous acres, just to give you another perspective, that I shouldn't say this was not proposed as a change. 2,000 contiguous acres is about 3 township sections. So that's my presentation regarding the changes. Are there any questions to me first before the applicant?
Any questions of Evan at this point?
Evan, question. Thank you, Mr. Chair. The 660-foot property boundary, at least, it says. So is that, first of all, that's on the property, not outside the property boundary? Okay. And then, so we don't create a no man's land of something going on outside. And that is a case-by-case basis. That is not just here it is. Here's 660 feet. You can build here. In some cases, would planning and zoning come and say, actually, that needs to be 1,500 feet or 1,000 feet? Or are you saying that 660 feet would be
the minimum?
The minimum.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure some cases, if someone was planning a nuclear plant, I'm just giving you a crazy example here, then it wouldn't be 660 feet. It would obviously be something much bigger. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, that would come under negotiation, obviously, if it needs to be something bigger.
Okay. And presently it's 5,280 feet.
That's
quite a large difference.
That's quite of a large difference. That was considered, as far as I heard the conversations, a little bit too much. And we have to imagine right now a distance, the way I was looking at it, a distance from the intersection of Butte here to Circle K, that could be a forest there pretty much. That's and we have also to think, I mean, at least the way I see it, is that industrial doesn't mean factories spewing stuff out. It could be, I always think of Apple or another manufacturing, or it could be Amazon.
It could be an industrial park.
It could be an industrial park, but again, yes. So that's the distance I am giving you as an example, just to see, okay, how would that feel in a way? And I'm sure that that would be landscaped, natural, open space. That could be, the code says nothing about what it could be. It's simply.
So it could be an industrial space, and then infill in that space with office buildings or something. Could it do that?
My understanding is it could be, yes. My understanding is
so it's not a vacant space. It wouldn't necessarily be a vacant space. It could be infilled with some other.
Yes, my understanding is that the code doesn't say anything about what it could be. It just says that industrial space has to be 660 feet, just to provide more of a buffer from noise and other issues.
Okay.
From residential.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions?
I was going to ask some questions along the same. Why 660 feet, which is basically 2 football fields? And you mentioned Apple, which is in Maricopa County. Is there a mile buffer between that and any home? There's homes up against that Apple. Isn't there closer than 1 mile?
I'm not familiar with that development, but 660 feet is an eighth of a mile. So this is an agreement that we came up with with the Planning and Zoning Commission when we had the meeting. The previous number seemed a little bit too much. So this is 660 feet. It seemed a good number. So there's no science behind it in a way.
The way it is now, you'd need 3 miles to do a project. You'd need a mile buffer, then a project, then another mile.
Yeah.
Which is huge.
It's huge, and if you consider that 2,000 contiguous acres, about 3 sections, if you have 3 sections in a row, then pretty much 1 section on either side would be a buffer, and the development would be in the middle. But if they're contiguous, basically there's no space for employment development, because north-south there's no distance. There's no 1 mile distance.
And this would be uniform over the whole county?
Yes, that's correct. I mean, uniform. It would apply to any zoning change.
No exception for, like, I've come out of city government where you had rural areas which can have horses and urban areas can't. So once you're in the county, it's basically same zoning for the whole county with,
yes,
if there's state land in there and whatever. So, okay. You mentioned employment centers. What all does that encompass? And the way it reads now, you could not build anything. I mean, anything that employs people, for instance, or is this only manufacturing? What?
It's mostly
explain maybe employment centers.
It's mostly manufacturing, and there's a definition in the comprehensive plan that I don't have with me right now, but it's mostly manufacturing.
That's all I have right now.
Okay. Any questions?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Cavanaugh?
Thank you. Thanks, Evan. So the summary of this, the purpose is to allow a zone to be approved, which allows flexibility within that zone for the developer.
Right.
And inside the zone, it could be retail, it could be manufacturing, it could be office space, or no?
Yes, and that's in the previous slide. The 75% requirement of employment was reduced down to 50%.
Okay.
So 50% manufacturing, I
Okay.
would say.
And so this is for 2,000 acres and up. What if we did 1,000 acres and up?
Excellent. If we did 1,000 acres, that's about a section and a half.
Okay. What if we did 750? Would it fit?
I don't know. I mean, it depends on what kind of employments, I shouldn't say employments, what kind of applicants we're looking for. My understanding is this specifically targets certain applicants, large applicants. So the more we bring it down, my understanding is we're probably taking away from the power of the PAD, for one thing. And then we're making it more universal. Instead of targeting specific large-scale applicants, we're targeting small-scale applicants also. So it seems to me that it begins to get and mess with the PAD regulations that we have. So many applicants may choose this section instead of the PAD. So that's where I'm going to leave this.
Okay. So what's wrong with small developers then?
I didn't say that there's anything
No,
wrong
I
with
know.
small
I'm not being
developers.
argument. I'm just being.
Okay.
Yeah. So if a local developer has 500 or 750 acres and wants, people are working from home now. And my
Yes.
thought is this is excellent because now you can have a kind of a synergistic community with a central office space on 1,000 acres maybe
Yes.
rather than 2,000, and where some large developers can buy $2,000 acres
Yes.
with their dollars from the state. Folks in Pinal County might be sitting on 1,000 acres or 750 acres and could employ this. So I think that's something we should think about.
So the question then would come up as to, is the PAD ineffective towards that direction for smaller developments?
Well, we'll have to look.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Well, yeah, I do. If I could.
Well, let me just weigh in there because Supervisor Kavanaugh kind of hit on something. I mean, when we first put this classification in,
Yes.
what was it, 3 years ago, probably?
For Atessa, right?
Yeah, for Atessa. At that time, I said, well, I don't know why you're using 2,000 acres. Why not use 1,000 acres?
Okay.
And it's a tool in the toolbox. It's depending on what type of development a person is looking to develop. I mean, still might a PAD may be the better way to go, or this classification may be the better way to go, because this kind of gives more flexibility as far as different types of uses. And I mean, frankly, 1,000 acres is a lot of land. Is a good piece of land. Like you say, it's a section and a half.
Yeah.
Of areas. So, again, it's just, to me, these are land classifications that different types of entities may want to use to develop, and I see it as a real opportunity for employment type of operations. And it does create that synergy. And this is countywide. I know that we've had people come in and talk about it, even down by Marana at one time. Didn't develop, but it's very attractive to people on that are looking to do some large development, and it gives them flexibility to put in multiple types of uses. So I like the 1,000 acres myself, and because I said that 3 years ago.
Oh,
so,
wow. Okay.
Anyway. Supervisor Goodman.
You bet.
I just wanted to get that out. What was
Well,
fresh.
and I guess my comments are along the same lines as yours and Supervisor Kavanaugh's, and that is I would like to see the possibility of shrinking that amount, because in my district alone, I mean, we have quite a bit of those open spaces that could attract some of these types of developments. I mean, we've already said 80% of my population leaves to go to work. And 500 of them, I just found out, go to Boeing. But nonetheless, I think allowing us more flexibility by shrinking that amount down makes a lot of sense.
Okay. That's a good argument, yeah.
So to your point on the PAD, Mr. Evanopoulos, did I say that? No, I didn't.
That's right.
I will, though. Evangelopoulos.
Yes.
So if the PAD is effective, why do we need this?
That's a good question. My manager had a presentation a few sessions ago about the difference between a PAD and this. So this is more flexible. This allows more flexibility, has less hurdles on the way. So a big developer comes in, like one that intended to come to the county, it helps move in the development much faster. So that's my understanding. And sometimes such developments may be to the benefit of the county. So in a way, it's good for the county to have a good tool to move in such beneficial employment centers that will attract employment, basically, faster than the usual method.
So I think it's good to be offering this kind of flexibility in regards to planning and zoning. I'd like to see it even smaller. I agree with the chairman. And I think there are two negative issues involved in restrictive planning and zoning. First is the discrimination we see against people who don't have the money to negotiate with our planning and zoning department, and overly restrictive zoning codes keep people away who can't afford, or don't want to invest the risk money in going for a change. The second concern is home prices. So the cost of getting property rezoned is reflected in the overall cost of homes in Pinal County. And if we had lower development costs, including zoning, I think it would lead to more affordably priced housing. We have a housing shortage in Pinal County, and we really need to unleash, in my opinion, market forces to meet the needs. And so we just don't want to be a county full of solar farms. I'd like to see more houses and more business centers.
Mr.
Chairman, can I get a?
Go ahead.
Evan, you mentioned in there 20 years. Anything existed within 20 years. Could you explain how that plays in? And for instance, now it ended up being annexed into Apache Junction, but D.R. Horton, they bought a bunch of property down there. And the so-called superstition vistas, which is a concept. There's really no such thing as superstition vistas, but it's kind of a, let's do this. And if it starts off all the way to Florence Junction and a big home builder buys a big chunk, a lot of the thought is in the middle of that or on the backside to make employment so that they don't have to drive. So how does that figure into the 20 years? Because this would be new, and just because it's sold for houses, employment could come into the interior or the side.
Now, if you please remind me, when did I mention 20 years?
It's there's something that said anything that has existed.
Oh, the 660, you mean? Okay, all right.
Yeah. Oh, that got scratched. Okay, at least 1 mile. Platted not more than 20 years prior.
Our plan subdivision and the date.
So if something was platted 21 years, what does that mean?
No. That was just,
No.
Yeah.
Because I think some of the building out at Peralta, that's been on the books for 20 years, and it's just now getting built. So that would be kind of an example there. And, okay, I just wondered why that was the 20 years, and so.
I don't have a comment on that. I'm sure that's something that could be discussed and changed.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
McClure.
McClure. So,
turn it around here so I can see it.
The 660 feet, just I'm having a hard time with that coming down so much. I mean, I'd prefer to see something like 1,000 feet, but I understand if we go to smaller acreage that creates an issue. But we're not talking about smaller acreage at this time. We're talking about 2,000 acres. And to put a 1,000-foot minimum buffer that's still also adjustable. You know, I mean, it's just a little bit more.
Yeah, no,
That's my comment.
I
That's just a
understand what you're
comment.
saying, and it's
Because it still can be infilled. It can still be infilled with other development in that property, but it's not the industry, it's not the nuclear plant where Homer Simpson works. I mean, it's not any of that. So
it's not the primary.
it's not the primary use. It's an infill, but it's not that structure right there that may or may not be infilled.
So you're thinking 3 football fields instead of 2.2? Evan, when you
Then you're back. You're gonna have to buy 2,000 acres, so you can.
Well, no, I'm saying, but I think,
you can get
but we're
the
discussing
distance.
2,000
But-
acres at this time. If we're
I know.
changing those to 1,000 acres, and that changes that,
Yeah.
which again is subject to change even when planning and zoning says, 660 feet, we can change it to much larger.
Sure. If I may interrupt, maybe this is a good point to bring the applicant in and.
Yeah, I wanted to get to that in a minute, but I just want to say, and you know, on a lot of this stuff, I think it almost has to be more of a case-by-case basis. I mean, if you know what if we know what the use is going to be, if they're out there stamping fenders out, it's out of steel, you're going to want probably more than 1,000 feet. But if you're over there soldering cell phones together, it's probably not a real big problem about how far it is from. I mean, it's just really kind of depends on the use, and that's one of the things that always has bothered me about zoning. I think this kind of goes to what Supervisor Kavanaugh was saying. One size doesn't fit all.
That is correct.
And there has to be a way to evaluate these more on a case by case basis in a lot of scenarios. And I think somebody that's buying 1,000 acres or 2,000 acres, and they're going to, for lack of a better word, almost master plan it. There's going to be multiple uses.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to come with a DA. It's going to come with a development agreement at some level, and then you can work on those types of setbacks and buffers and that. You know.
So
that's
okay.
my personal opinion.
So what you're saying is there's no need for setting up a number at all.
I think, yeah, sometimes you just have to, you got to deal with it as it comes down the pike.
Okay.
But I'm not, I'm probably not the norm. But anyway, that's okay. I do want to bring the applicants, I believe you have 1 or 2 people from state land that want to speak to this. So please come on and identify yourself. And
thank you.
Hello, good morning, Mr. Chairman and Supervisors. It's nice to be back before you again. My name is Carolyn Oberholzer. I'm with the law firm of Bergen Frakes, Smalley and Oberholzer, and I'm here today on behalf of the Land Department. I am outside counsel for them on special projects such as this, and I do have a very brief PowerPoint presentation that I'd like to supplement staffs with, just to get a little more specific on why we made this application, and I'd be happy to be interrupted at any point with questions. But hopefully this will answer some of yours and some of at least the concerns that have been raised by the audience members as well. So first, it's important to touch on just state trust land in general and what is it. So the state trust lands were given to the state by the federal government in preparation for statehood. And these lands, there's 9.2 million acres of them. And unlike other public lands, these are not, although they're called state trust lands, they are not public lands. They are held in trust for designated beneficiaries, which means they are managed much more akin to private land. And they need to be managed for revenue generating purposes. And here's a map statewide of the trust lands. They're shown on this graphic in blue. 12.7% of this state is state trust land, which all told is 1.6 times the size of Maricopa County, which if you look at the screen, there's not a whole lot of blue in Maricopa County, but there sure is in Pinal County, and that's why we're here. This text amendment is proposed to apply county-wide, and as shown on this screen, that blue land represents well more than half of the private land within the county. So when the State Land Department is looking on how to manage these lands, we need to make sure that we have, Chairman, to use your words, the tools in the toolbox to be able to deploy. And it has to be not a one-size-fits-all. However, in this case, you do have this MP-CMP category already in place. And so while it worked for Atessa because of some of the buffer restrictions that you spoke of earlier and things I'll get into, with a few subtle tweaks, we can make this a very usable tool for the Land Department and make it akin to a tool that we have in other jurisdictions. And that is through the development of zoning bank concept, where you have development units and you specifically identify within those development units the maximum intensity of uses, the menu of uses. That's all structured in your code already in this MP-CMP. But there's some fundamental threshold items to be able to apply for it that we just couldn't get past. And so that's why we're here today, is to request those subtle changes to allow us to get past those, which will allow you to create a very tailored application based on the context, based on the area, the size, what it's near to. And in many cases, you can exceed and further limit what is applied for. And this is just establishing that baseline criteria to allow us to apply, period. So again, this is all done for the beneficiaries. Every single acre in the state has a designated beneficiary of state trust land. The largest, by a long shot, is the K-12 Public Schools Fund. There are 13 beneficiaries in total. The remainder are institutional beneficiaries, and you can see your favorite schools on the screen, or maybe you're missing one. So as I mentioned, every dollar generated by a lease on state trust land goes to the beneficiaries. And also, every dollar generated from a sale goes to the beneficiaries. The difference is that once there is a sale, it then does become private land. And in that event, it becomes a part of your tax roll and the county's property taxes and all of its secondary taxing districts. However, the Land Department is a general fund agency. The general fund agency does not receive proceeds from the sales. So they have to be very efficient in how we manage these projects, and we've been very fortunate to have a great relationship with Pinal County in developing ways to help the Land Department manage its assets here. And we worked with staff extensively before we came up with this text amendment, and appreciate Evan's presentation of it today. I don't need to do too much further in explaining all of it, although I did want to touch on a few additional items. So that fundamental criteria to even be able to apply requires an employment designation first in the comprehensive plan, or some combination of employment, high-intensity activity, airport designations in your comp plan. But half of it has to be employment. So when you think about that and you look at what were the central component requirements before, sporting, recreational, entertainment, amusement, cultural, or transportation, those uses don't necessarily align with the employment designation. So it seemed that the MP-CMP was really well structured to attract a very large-scale user and a very large-scale development. But it was missing this central component idea that the employment user would be the central component. So we added that, and we also added open space because we want to make clear that that is also a very worthy component and should be deemed central. And so in that effort, we tried to assign a minimum acreage to that. So we originally applied to include 1,000 acres in the definition of central component, but after a very long discussion at Planning Commission, the commissioners felt like, why would we add 1,000 acres? That would potentially eliminate worthy candidates. And we agree. So we agreed with them in their motion to you all to strike that language. And so that's why that 1,000 acres was stricken. Sounds like we might be talking about another 1,000 other places in a moment. So as Evan mentioned, we did add employment centers in the criteria of what it is supposed to accomplish. And this is not a substantive change. This is merely to make clear that if your central component is an employment center, that it must have exemplary community amenities and benefits with enhanced design, that an employment development would not be exempt from that. Then again, here's the 50% change. This is with regard to the comp plan designation. So in order to apply, you have to have this employment designation, or prior to this, it required 75% employment, with the balance being some combination of these listed designations. And we're taking that down to 50, again, trying to increase the flexibility of that. And finally, the buffer discussion, which we certainly spent a lot of time talking through. And again, I go back to, why are we here? A countywide text amendment that will create a process by which we might be able to participate in if you have 2,000 acres and you meet the minimum requirements. But that process in the sections that we didn't go through that are not changing, again, establishes a very significant level of application information that has to establish maximum number of uses in development units for certain areas, and allows you to create this menu of options. Unlike a PAD, which has to work with the underlying existing county codes. You have to pick exactly this legally described sub area, you attach the overlay on top of it, and you can only alter what was already there. So if a use is missing, if your code hasn't caught up to some new use and you can't specify it, we got to go through a text amendment to get it added to the underlying category to then be able to amend it in a PAD overlay. The MPCMP allows you to roll with the times and establish new uses as they arise. I mean, in my vocabulary, the zoning code language has changed tremendously. 5 years ago, I wasn't using the word data center. Those used to be called intelligence hotels. How we refer to things evolves, and the MPCMP allows us to write the zoning districts for the master project with limits. All of those limits, you are free to require a stipulation that exceeds it. So if a proposal came in for a 1,000-foot buffer for industrial uses, and you felt that it should be 2,000 feet, and you wanted to limit further the number of uses that were allowed in that in-between area, whether it be retail, residential, office, that is what would evolve in the hearing process. So nothing about this is by right. It must be justified, supported, mitigated, just like all the things you guys look to in every PAD application. This faces the same scrutiny. So the 660 feet, when we started the discussion with the Planning Commission, I think we started it at 150 feet. Very clearly, that was not enough to get their support. We did have unanimous recommendation from them, and 660 was arrived at, I believe, by them because the focus was industrial uses. You know, there's no other prohibition in your code that limits your ability to apply for an industrial category next to any other category. It just comes with certain requirements. But there's nothing out there that has something as significant as this. However, we're comfortable with the 660 feet. You know, we have a lot of acreage in the county that we're focused on here, and I'm just fast forwarding this to show that as you're thinking about, well, what are the areas and where would this 660 feet even come into play? If you look at the county's current comp plan, you have to be purple and some combination of the red circle, which are your high-intensity activity centers, or the airport designations, which are gray and blue. So there are not a whole lot of eligible properties within the county. When we're focusing on, well, what are the areas that 660 feet, if you went in with the base minimum, what would they apply to? And I see you all looking on that screen, so I'm going to leave it there for a little bit. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that I didn't answer in the presentation, and I thank you for your time.
Any questions or comments? Well, they're focused on that map. Okay.
I have a comment, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
You did really an excellent job of presenting this and explaining the problems well. Probably one of the best presenters from the attorney side outside our office we've seen here in a while.
Well, thank you. Take that as a big compliment.
Was there another person from State Land that wanted to speak?
No, with me today, though, are Mark Edelman from the department and Matt Klazyko, and so we're all available for questions.
Okay. Any questions for State Land at this time? Wait, hey, sir. Sit down, sit down. We'll open up the public hearing in a second, and you'll have your opportunity to come up and ask questions. All right, go. Thank you.
Yes, and Chairman and Supervisors, should it be helpful for me to come back up?
Yeah.
By all means, thank
You're
you.
available,
Okay.
right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, I am going to open the public hearing portion of this item. So I'll ask that you come up, state your name. Try and if multiple people are saying the same thing, maybe paraphrase it just so we can get through and everybody will have an opportunity to speak. We'll try and keep smooth decorum here. So, and you'll have 3 minutes. So, first person, go ahead. Come on up. Give us your name.
My name is Glenn Legas, and I'm here speaking on behalf of the Gold Canyon Homeowners Alliance.
Okay.
Good morning to the board, staff. A little over 6 years ago, we started our house search as I was closing down my career in law enforcement in the D.C. area. And pretty soon we found and fell in love with the desert and the open spaces here, the quiet, dark nights, particularly these communities tucked in against the superstitions. We didn't take for granted what we saw, though. We did our due diligence. We found that the land next to our property was zoned low to moderate density, which is 1 to 3.5 houses. Well, next to our property, there's a space before we get to the trust land. Then there's some space on the other side of the wire. Then there's a road. And we presumed if there's any new neighbors, there would be a little bit of space or some kind of buffer between that road and our new neighbors. That was perfectly acceptable. But now, if we're talking about changing it to commercial designation, that's completely unfair without an adequate buffer. And changing the buffer from the mile to 660 feet is an 87% reduction. Instead of a blanket 660, there should be a process to reduce that buffer from a mile if the project merits it, instead of having to fight to push it up because the minimum is 660 and a buyer is going to presume that they can use that. When the state land applied, we formed the alliance, and we got a petition together, and we've got 1,700 signatures. As an aside, I note that 1,700 is more of a margin than in many local elections. That's a big number. Now, we understand that the state land has to sell land to raise money, and maybe commercial is the only viable way to do that. But community participation in shaping what that looks like is only fair. And maybe the community would support projects if the process was open and fair and we had the opportunity to be part of that negotiation. 87% upfront reduction is not fair and doesn't consider the current citizens. Looping back to my story, I would dare say that the 1,700 folks here have very similar stories to mine, whether they're lifelong residents of Arizona or whether they're new to the state. We're in the area because it is what it is and we love it. We just want input as to what it's going to look like in the future, and that 87% reduction cuts us off at the knees. Please vote no on this or change it to some more reasonable number. Maybe a mile isn't reasonable, but I don't think 660 is either. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And who would I present?
Just put it in the basket there.
These two?
You take. She'll take those.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Mr.
Fourth. Yeah.
For clarification, would the presenter have to say he wants to make that part of the record, or no? Those signatures.
Probably on a procedure there. If he gives it to the clerk, it is part of the record, is it not?
That is correct. Once he hands it to the clerk and the clerk accepts it, it becomes part of the record.
Then it's part of the record.
Thank you.
Uh-huh. Your name and...
Good morning, Chairman,
Thank you.
Supervisors. Lou Hanson from Gold Canyon.
Okay.
I am one of the 1,700 signatures. I understand the challenges you're facing. A lot of problems going on right now with developing throughout the whole United States. And I'm going to deviate a second. We've got this water concern in Pinal County, but yet we're proposing all these businesses to come in. Most recently, the Rivian plant, if it's comparable to a Tesla plant, the acres they were buying, the number of employees, that plant would consume more water than 30,000 homes. And that's a fact. So that concerns me. On the flip side, as far as what you're trying to do for the county and build revenue, I totally understand that. There is no one size fits all. In fact, one size fits no one. So we've got to find a way to compromise here with something that everybody can be okay with. When I bought in Gold Canyon in 2007, the land around us was, and then you had the master plan come along. It's zoned residential. Where we run into the problem is when we minimize a buffer zone and someone buys and it's residential, then when you rezone it to commercial, that's where an existing homeowner gets totally blindsided, especially when it's a plant that's going to employ 6,000, 7,000 people and probably be 50, 60, 70 feet tall. Because I grew up near Kokomo, Indiana. I'm very familiar with auto plants. The technology's changed, but the noise, the lights, the traffic. And as was mentioned, it's an 87.5% reduction. That is huge. That's not a modification. That's like a total 180. So I just want to speak. I'm not opposed to businesses, but can we try and focus on creating business areas so people that buy homes and neighborhoods and kids play, so we don't have 1 mile of homes, 1 mile of factories, 1 mile of offices, but actually create centers instead of popping it between EDO and Peralta Trail, especially if it's a factory. So based upon the 600, my other bothered me personally. We mix units. We go from 1 mile to 660 feet. 660 sounds big compared to 1. It's a good sales job. It's 1 mile to 1/8 of a mile. Or it's 5,280 feet down to 660 feet. That is a major reduction. And I think that creates a loss of home values for people in the affected area, traffic problems, etc. So as it stands, I just wanted to state, I wish you luck, but I'm opposed to the 660-foot buffer. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, just leave it there in the basket. Anyone else? Sure, come forth. State your name.
I'm Pamela Burks. Hello, County Supervisors and Planning and Zoning Commissioners. I'm a Mountain Brook resident and a community service volunteer, serving in many capacities in local organizations, Gold Canyon Business Association, Gold Canyon Lions, organizer and event coordinator for the annual Gold Canyon Business Fair for the past 12 years. I'm also on the editorial staff of the Mountaineer, freelance writer and for local publications, and a member of Adobe and interim vice president for Alliance. The Adobe and Alliance organizations are here today as a grassroots movement to request that our Pinal County supervisors, planning and zoning commissioners, and all decision makers Please vote no to reduce the buffer zones between new multi-purpose developments and existing residential developments. This is not responsible to change the entire county's buffer zone to accommodate exceptions. Take each exception and analyze the pros and cons with a transparent process, judging its impact on the community with community input, and weigh the economic gain for the immediate and surrounding communities. Each project is unique and should be vetted individually. Yes, that would mean Pinal County and State Land Trust to be responsible to the voting tax-paying residents. Please take our organization seriously because we represent thousands of residents who want their voices to be heard. We are requesting a seat at the table regarding any development surrounding the Superstition Wilderness area, including the north and south sides of US 60 between Gold Canyon, Peralta Trails, and Entrada del Oro, or any plans that affect our area as a whole, whatever the reasons were for not including the majority of residents in Gold Canyon and the collective Superstition Mountain communities. You now know that Adobe and Alliance represent thousands of residents. And understand, since July 1st, we would have had even a larger number if we had had more time and if residents were not in their summer homes or traveling. We are proud of our grassroots movement and the ability to harness the effort of ordinary people who have a shared sense of justice and knowledge to influence our policymakers. As far as I know, we are still a democracy and a government by the people, for the people. Given the short time we had to mobilize, we, the ordinary people, aligned together. We signed petitions, made phone calls, sent emails, posted on social media, internet site, put up posters. Please vote no to change the buffer zone. Keep the 1 mile buffer zone in Pinal County. We say no to factories, electric car factories, electric battery factories, solar farms, stadiums, railroads in our backyards. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Anyone next? Supervisor Hart.
When I was going to get up. Chairman, Supervisor Todd House from Apache Junction. I was enjoying retirement really well until a couple of different issues came forward in the area of District 5. This text amendment was in conjunction with State Trust Land trying to change the comprehensive plan in the Gold Canyon area up there, 11,000 acres. That's why there's a lot of people calling and talking from Gold Canyon today. You know, Chairman Miller, we set up that mile border because Atessa had a racetrack. That noise travels a mile real easy in flat track. And that's why we originally set that up. Has anybody looked into what that's going to do with the current Atessa project going forward? They may be able to change how they're doing the Atessa project. Think about that for a second. Also, while I was on the board, several different race tracks had come into our area in District 5 to build a nice, huge NASCAR racetrack. And I'm sure that we would all love to have that mile buffer when you have racetracks, even though it's down below or whatever. We had a problem with the Motor ET Sports up on Ironwood, complaints from a mile away, still in Pinal County. A mile is a long distance, and I understand that that's a big difference, and this was just for that one project, probably. But 660, I think that might be a little shallow, depending on how, you know, we're always talking about a large development here. We're not talking about a small development. We're talking about a huge corporation building a huge development. So they've got the money and resources to go ahead and plan and develop how they want to. I understand when we were on the board that we wanted to give them flexibility. I still do. Still want to give them we want to entice economic development to Pinal County. But the question is, would it have an effect on the Atessa development agreement as we go? And going forward, State Trust Land doesn't currently have, they're just doing it. They own the land, and I understand why, but they don't have an applicant for it currently. They've withdrawn. So what are we doing it for? Just for the shits and giggles? I think that we need to look at that a little bit and decide, you know, whether this is a good application. And we have planning and zoning. They can take every single case and look at it case by case. I mean, these are big projects. This is something that should take a lot of time and a lot of consideration from planning, zoning, and the board. And to change it now would be just kind of inherently wrong to do it right now. I think you should wait and see what comes down the line. I agree with giving state trust land flexibility, absolutely. But until they actually have a project in mind or somebody coming forward as an applicant, I don't see why to do it now. Thank you for your attention.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else like to speak on this? Come forward.
Hello, my name's Alette Lubick. I live in Gold Canyon. I'm against changing the boundaries and making a smaller space. One thing nobody's speaking about is how special this piece of land is by the superstitions. It's a special piece of land. It's beautiful. We value it greatly. And in America, this is what we're losing. This is what America was. You, as our supervisors of the board, you have the unique opportunity to compromise in how you treat this unique piece of land. This is what we're asking you for. Compromise. Be unique in how you choose to deal with this issue. We don't want to be a cookie cutter. There's cookie cutters all over America. It's not so lovely anymore. We're asking for special considerations. You have the unique opportunity to be different, to think outside the box, to not be putting us into that cookie cutter. I know that that's challenging in today's society because money is important. We have funding we have to look at. I'm not negating that. What I'm saying, and what I think a lot of people here are saying, is that this is one of the last unique opportunities. You 5 people have the ability to irrevocably change this for the better or for the worse. And whatever you do will last forever. It's important. So we're asking that you really think about what you're doing. That's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you.
Hi there, name is Michael Cowan. I'm doing this personally, but also I am president of the Gold Canyon Alliance. So this kind of started, I think, a couple months ago with our shocking revelation that our 11,712 acres of zoned residential land was going to be turned into commercial employment. Sounds okay unless you live right next to it. We've all put millions of dollars of investments of our houses and business knowing where we are. We're living next to a residential community someday in the future. But when Rivian, if it is Rivian, I know there's a lot of loose stuff floating around, but according to their planning zone amendment paper, they're talking about putting in 20,000 employees there. They want to put 8,000 acres and turn it into commercial employment. 8,000 acres. I still don't think people, I get a little laugh because I go through my little speeches there and talk about, we're all familiar with potato barns, right? How many potato barns to fit on 8,000 acres? 3,000, 100,000 square foot buildings will fit on that land. That's a lot. So we went through this process. Looks like apparently they backed out, maybe because of us, we don't know. We're not against change, and we know you have to sell a property, and all we're asking for is to be involved. We're not involved. We feel like we were lied to. We were misled. When people come up and say, we had no idea who's interested in this. We don't have anybody. We're just going to change it to employment. Then we find out through the Freedom of Information Act, we got months worth of paperwork, people talking about it, people and certain specific people right behind me said we had nothing to do with it, but their names down there and saying, well, we're on board with it back in March. That's a lie, and it's really discouraging. And so we're beyond that, but now we get a thing saying, well, you know what, we want to change the buffer from a mile down to 660 feet. That is an 87% reduction. And besides that, when it comes down to it, a mile, I think, is too much. I really do. That's a long ways away. 660 feet to have a, and I'm going to use Rex's, Rivian's factory in Illinois. It's 70 feet tall, approximately. So I live right on the edge of the property, and I'll be the first to admit it. I live in Entrada del Oro. And if you're saying, well, hey, you know what? It's okay to put a 7-story factory running supposedly 24 hours a day, lit, only 660 feet away from my house. That's a joke. And I really believe if any of you gentlemen here, and ladies, had this happening in your backyard, to where you're sitting there saying, oh, all of a sudden there's a 7-story building all lit up, running all the time, or just a racetrack or proving grounds. You know, it's okay. We're not going to mind that. You've all spoken. Everybody in here, everybody in here has spoken about how they're looking at the commercial side of things. None of you spoke on, well, gee, what about the other side? What about the person who spent $500,000 living and that, knowing what they have, knowing there might be houses, without a doubt, but all of a sudden they're going to change it to commercial employment.
Okay, you can wrap it up. Your time is up.
Well, anyway, thank you for letting me yak and go through here, and I know it's hard, but I just think we need to compromise. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hi.
Hi.
My name's Heather. I live in Gold Canyon.
Okay.
I'm also against the project. Am I allowed to ask questions during this? I'm wondering, was an archaeological survey review ever done on this land? I don't think Michael Baker's company completed that step.
Well, let me just, if you ask a question, I don't know that we will answer it, but if we can have staff or somebody else answer it after you sit down.
Okay.
Okay.
So that's what I'd like to know, if part of Michael Baker's survey was to do an archaeological review of the petroglyphs and the holes, the grinding holes. Like people have already said, this is such a special area, and it just, I don't know. I feel like changing these boundaries, you're putting the cart before the horse, not even knowing what's going to go in the space. In regards to Adobe, it's very upsetting that they have been the organization to represent Gold Canyon for over 2 decades. And they're just kind of, well, I don't know. I think you know what I'm getting at there. Just wondering if you've read an article recently about Tesla cars in Austin, how it took actually 40% more water to put that fire out at Tesla than it would a traditional fire. So I suggest all of these big corporate projects and things, you guys got to do your research, because we already have a water shortage, as you know, which is why you're trying to change the zoning. And it's unethical. I'm going to cry, so I'm going to stop. Thank you.
Okay. All right. I've had a request by one of my supervisors for a short 5-minute recess, if that's okay. And then I'll resume. We will resume the public hearing portion of this. So I'm going to recess for 5 minutes. Looks like everybody enjoyed the break, took advantage of the break. All right, thank you. So we're still in the public hearing process of this item. Is there anybody else that would like to speak to this text amendment? Sure, come forth. Your name?
Good morning again, Honorable Chairman, honorable members. Glenn Wall, President of Adobe in Gold Canyon, repeated myself. I just wanted to let you know that during the process of the Alliance and the Adobe organization gathering petitions and so forth, I was tasked with putting together all the petitions and so forth. And I simply want to say that all the members of Adobe that responded, and we went into the thousands between the two of us, not one from that we received ever agreed with the reduction to the 660 feet. I'm not going to repeat myself based upon what was already spoken to you. So there's a great interest in Gold Canyon. My job as president is to represent the people, and the people are saying they're not in agreement with the 660 feet. It's not an easy task, I understand that, but it just seems unrealistic when you listen to the different issues that are brought up within that perspective. So respectfully, I present that to you on behalf of Adobe and really the Alliance too. And I thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Okay. I think the young lady way in the back keeps trying to come forth, and so I want to make sure you have an opportunity. Well, I'm not going to let you get out of here without saying something.
I'm going to try. I think you know, well, I'll say my name again. It's Mary Ann Fries. I guess maybe we're in the afternoon now, but good afternoon. I'm not real sure what time it is. But anyway, I'm here to oppose the Board of Supervisors' consideration of this proposed ordinance to change the buffer zones from 1 mile to 660 feet. I feel the 660 feet is extremely too close. It would not be a good planning decision for our county. This proposed ordinance could seriously impact the character of Pinal County, which would result in damaging the look and value of our residential homes, quality of life, and cause issues relative to having a safe and desirous neighborhood to live in. Would it be possible to make revisions to the ordinance per parcel or per your decision of this is the projected area that we're interested in per parcel, instead of doing an overall ordinance for the 660 acres, but taking one into consideration? Also, how would you monitor the water usage for an employee-based or a manufacturing? How do you monitor water? How much water they're going to use, since we do seem to have water usage problems around here? How would you know that they're using more water or less water than they're supposed to use to cause a problem? And if that problem were to exist, how would you be able to change it after the fact? I just have one more thing to say. You're putting up with me. Also, as I retired after 20 years, I imagine some of you may want to retire after a certain amount of time. Would you want this 660 feet to be close to your house? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Is there anybody else? Okay, I'm going to ask State Land, did you want to come up and respond to any of the comments that were made? And then I think I'll also ask staff about a little bit about the process, but I'll have State Land first and then.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Supervisors, for the opportunity. Yes, I would like to address a couple of points I heard, and certainly any others that you'd like us to. With regard to, again, the process that we are undertaking here, this is a county-wide text amendment that is creating a district opportunity for somebody to apply to, just like all the commercial, industrial, any other district that the county has right now. This district exists, but to Mr. House's point, it was established for a TESA, which essentially was a unicorn piece of property that fit into the category of this 1 mile buffer and all of those limitations. And there was a specific project in the queue that was created with a mind towards. The challenge when we are dealing with state trust lands is that these auctions are open to the public. We cannot and are constitutionally prohibited from structuring an auction and creating a particular use. And that is why it is so difficult in these processes with the public to explain this key nuance I'm saying over and over. This is more like private land, except for I do have this huge other problem here that is not like private land. I cannot go and pre-negotiate with an end user so that when we do come forward, we say that this is actually the project, because what we're doing is establishing a framework for entitlements that potentially a market user, major economic developer, when working with the land department on potential applications, they know that I have this process available to me in the county, and for that reason, I can see a path forward if I'm the ultimate successful purchaser. Right now, we don't have that to look forward to. So we need to create some category in the county that will allow for this creation of zoning banks that are different from the typical PAD, because those are a small enough scale, and they, as I talked about before, they are too limiting in that we have to choose from the menu of available districts, sub-districts, and create legal descriptions and certainty as to subcategories, and it just isn't flexible enough to allow for a large project. So with this category, you create development units and zoning districts that are specifically tailored to the area. But what it is not specifically tailored to is any particular property. This is not a TESA. There is no project, and a lot of the comments that you heard are talking about the application that had been made for state trust land near Gold Canyon that has since been withdrawn. Now, had that project moved forward, it was a large component of it was employment. Based on the framework we're establishing in this zoning district, it is possible that a future application to apply for this zoning district, which would come with all of the public processes of any zoning case, may have been thereafter initiated. But first, you would have had to get through the comprehensive plan amendment process, which is only handled for majors once a year. So that has since been withdrawn. There is no application related to this text amendment. There is no specific property. So I don't want to get into discussion of exactly which properties this will go to, because it's literally on the map that we showed, anything in blue, and then anything within that blue that is also coincident with your employment designation in the comprehensive plan. So I don't know that that's going to resonate with members of the public, because I'm stuck in a very specific, zoning lane here, and I understand this is not language most people use every day. But I've tried to explain it basically. However, with regard to the 1 mile buffer, just to clarify, the 1 mile buffer is not even a buffer. It means that district, that future district boundary, has to have a 1 mile separation from existing residential. So I just struggle to find any other property in the county that can meet that requirement. So eliminating that is helpful, because it's really the key hindrance to why this is an unusable district. But the 660-foot buffer, there's been a lot of discussion about that today, and the thought was establishing that industrial use prohibition and 660 feet to existing adjacent residential. We understand that there are certain more populated areas where it might be more comfortable for you all to have something more clear to limit the industrial uses as in code. Now, this is something you can't deviate from. As we talked about before, you can exceed the 660 feet in your requirements, but as a threshold matter, an applicant cannot place anything within that 660 feet that qualifies as an industrial use as proposed. So what we have discussed following the discussion this morning is we could go to 1,000 feet perhaps on that industrial use buffer with regard to existing residential that is zoned for less than 20,000 square foot lots. The idea being that there's a lot of areas of the county that are larger, more rural, and single residence zones in that place that are a lesser density would not require as significant of a buffer. But if the concern is in more populated areas, which we would presume a 20,000 square foot or under lot would be, then we could go in the text to a 1,000 foot buffer for that, and I scribbled some language on my page that I'm happy to offer to you if you feel that that is an important thing moving forward. And that's all.
Okay. Any other questions? Supervisor Goodman?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So what you're saying is that it's doable, you feel, with the state land if that text has changed from 660 to 1,000?
Mr. Chairman, supervisors, with regard to the lot size, so right now, the way it's written, and I don't know if we're able to put the presentation back up so we can see the language. I think that would be helpful. Sorry, put you on the spot. Thank you.
A minute.
And right now, the language reads, except that industrial uses must be located at least 660 feet from the property boundary of an existing residential use or platted subdivision exterior to the MPCMP on the date the zoning district is established. So what I would propose is to leave that all in place with a comma instead of a period after established, and say, or 1,000 feet if the existing residential use or platted subdivision is zoned for lots less than 20,000 square feet. So that it's one buffer if it's greater than, and it's one buffer if it's less than.
Okay. All right, thank you.
You bet. Thank you.
Okay. Supervisor Cerny?
Mr. Chairman, I know you sit on a statewide water board. Perhaps you could explain water allotments and that they're not really drilling any more wells in Pinal County, but the companies that have the water, they have the rights to it. And if it doesn't go here, it can go somewhere else. So there's only so much water, and these people that are promising water for certain projects throughout the county, the water is there and they do have the rights to it. It's their water they can sell. Could you explain that?
Yes. So depending on wherever a piece of property might be, it could be in a designation, which would be a water company that has the authority to an allocation of water that they can sell. Mm-hmm. So they're able to do that. They could be in a CCNN, and then that would be left up to a water company to determine whether or not they have the physical availability to deliver the water. And if they do, they will hear from the applicant typically on the demands that are going to be required on the development. They determine whether or not they can supply them, and if they can, they issue them what they call a will serve letter, which then you know that just says that if you build this project, we will be able to deliver the water that you're asking for. If they don't have it, they're not going to give them the will serve letter. So it's just down to the market. I mean, and all these companies, no matter who comes in, be it a subdivision, be it an industrial park, be it whatever, they all have to work out their water issues prior. And if they're doing their due diligence, they're going to do all of that even before they probably look at the zoning type scenario. There's tons of investigative information that all these developers need before they make a decision. So I don't know if that explains it, but typically they will know whether or not water can be delivered before they even get to this zoning portion. They'll have engaged with water companies.
Yes, Mr. Chairman and supervisors, that's absolutely correct. And water is so specific to each property.
Right.
You know, if it's in the AMA, if it's not.
Right.
And that is, you know, completely separate from the discussion of this district, except that in every case, I know this board factors in where are the water and sewer services for this project? Has that entity been identified, and do you have confirmation from them that they can serve you? In any other zoning case I've applied for in this county, that is always a question your staff asks and that they package in their report to you. So that is absolutely a very early and fundamental hurdle that anybody would need to overcome, establish, identify, and the zoning does not create the ability to draw more water than it is available or exists.
Right. So that's all left up to the developer right on the front end of all of this. So any other questions? Evan, I'd like you to come forth. Gentleman in the orange shirt, you're begging to ask a question, I can tell. No. If you're going to ask, you have to come up, identify yourself, and ask the question. I'll allow it. I don't want this. This is kind of out of sequence. I don't like doing
Very
this.
quickly, my question is, since you're amending from
Who are you? Yeah, again, I have
Okay.
to identify yourself.
I'm still Lou Hansen.
Okay.
And for the time being, I'm still from Gold Canyon,
Okay.
okay? My only question is, since we're changing or suggesting changing from 660 feet to 1,000 feet, we indicated our support or opposition based on 660 feet. So the game has changed now. Maybe it hasn't.
Okay.
And because it's changed, do we all get a chance again to speak on this proposed 1,000 feet? Because I personally, it doesn't change it for me.
Okay.
Or would it be better that we just say, we need to reschedule this based on the information collected and the proposed distance? Because we're just changing it, and you're assuming that everybody that spoke is going to be okay with it.
I'll get with
Okay,
staff
thank you.
on that. Now, Evan. Yeah. So I want to talk procedurally about an entity that comes in and asks for this designation of the MP CMP classification.
Yes.
For a piece of property. No, I don't care how big it is or whatever, but they come in and ask for that. And they propose a project. What happens at that review point of staff?
This is a rezoning, so it has to be rezoned first.
Okay.
So they would have to come in for a rezoning to rezone it to this to MP CMP.
Okay.
And it goes to a regular rezoning procedure with a hearing.
Okay.
And there's a clear specification in the code in 360 on how to apply and what exactly items to include in their application.
Okay.
So this is the process. It's laid out.
And that rezoning, is there some type of a preliminary plat?
There's no preliminary plat.
Okay.
There is what it requires. It's more or less of a bubble diagram, as far as I understand.
Okay.
But it does require the road layout.
Okay.
It specifically says trails, network plan, development areas, drainage, washes, or other natural features, roadway network, and classifications thereof. That's a requirement.
Okay.
So the roadway network is a requirement. And area of each development area, each bubble, land uses, densities, total possible dwelling unit counts, square footage of office or industrial areas. So it requires some numbers, but no specific site plan.
In those numbers and in those different classifications, could residential be one of them?
Yes, residential could be, yes.
Okay. And if there was a 7-story building proposed on one of those?
No.
Let me finish my
sure.
question. Would you go, you know what, we need to put some conditions on this? I mean, how many times have we had zoning cases come through here with 14, 15, 16, 20, 25 conditions?
Yes, I understand it. It's not at this level yet.
It's not at this level?
No. The 7-story building will not appear at this level.
Okay.
It will appear down the road when the applicant submits the plat and the specific site plan.
Okay.
That's when something like that would appear.
That's when the conditions start coming in?
Oh, yes. So actually, you're correct. The maximum height will be part of this.
Part of it?
Yes. It's at the very bottom, yes.
Okay. And the reason I'm kind of going through this is I want everybody to understand that the review process is intense, and it's very thorough, and it's not carte blanche. I mean, it's not just because you get this designation or you ask for it that it's, you can build anything. You can't. You still have multiple
exactly.
layers of review process to achieve whatever it is you're trying to develop. All right, that's all I have for now. Supervisor Goodman.
Yeah, and part of that component in a rezone is also public hearing, correct?
That is correct, yes, in the beginning.
Okay.
So, yeah, that is correct.
All right, just want to make sure that's very clear. Okay.
Okay. Questions or comments? I'm really not supposed to allow somebody else to speak twice. I am the chairman. New people?
Well, we've heard from the state land and we've heard from PZ. Prior to that, we were just speaking about the I just have a comment. It's not anything.
This is getting out of hand, but I'm going to allow it. Because I really am concerned that the process is not fully understood, and that's where.
Do you need any more here?
You can hang on.
Don't go far.
This won't take but a minute. I'm Pam Burks with Gold Canyon.
Okay, Pam.
And I do have a question or an observation. I thought our supervisors and planning and zoning worked for the residents. I see this close association with the Arizona State Land Trust. I understand that's their land, but we want to be part of the process. And it doesn't make sense to me. We will welcome any good ideas, but please let us be part of it. I'd like to come to your office every day, too.
Pam, well,
Thank
first
you.
of all, speak. That's why we have public hearings. And there's public hearings on every step of this process. You're here, aren't you?
We didn't hear about the state project before. No, we didn't.
Sir, I'm going to allow you, because I allowed somebody else. It's out of hand. Be brief with a question.
Glenn Ligas, Gold Canyon. I just wanted to observe that, and this was triggered by something from state land. They put that big map up there and they showed all the blue in Pinal County. That's state trust land. You've heard a lot from a lot of Gold Canyon folks here today, and that's because of the proposed application to sell the land between Peralta and EDO. But that blue is all over the county. This affects much more wider constituency than just Gold Canyon, and that's something I would like you folks to consider. And those folks aren't here today because maybe it's flying under the radar for them, but they're across the whole county. They're as impacted as we are.
We understand. Thank you. Okay. Yeah, I know it. I'm right there, Todd. Did you have something, Counselor? No. No. I think we're done. Okay, I'm closing the public hearing. Okay, board, where do you want to go with this? We have some suggestions by state land. We have some suggestions by a couple of supervisors. It is a text amendment for a zoning classification countywide. Has nothing to do with any one specific area. Has everything to do with the entire county.
It was brought up before about 1,000 acres instead of 2,000 for smaller companies to build. I mean, I can't help but think of the MyPillow commercials where the guy shows his little factory where he started out. Now he employs thousands of people. You got to start small sometimes to get big. So sometimes it does help to get a smaller company a start.
For startup. Did you have something, Mr. Cowan?
I was going to make a motion, but
Yeah.
let's wait for comments first.
Oh, okay, okay. Do you have anything? No.
You know, Mr. Chair, I do, because of the fact that there is a lot of state land in our county, and I appreciate you showing that, and then also expressing some of the frustrations or some of the restrictions that state land has in the sale of their properties. I appreciate a lot of that, of your of talking to that, and so I appreciate that. I personally am in favor of this, even as it's written under this scenario, because it does give a lot more flexibility to state land and other industry coming into this area, which is something that we've always talked about, that we've needed so desperately in our county. And so the other part is that I'm with you. I'm frustrated that the process is not fully understood by our constituents, and that this is just a text amendment, and it's not a rezoning. I remember being reminded of something like that by a former supervisor whenever I was making some arguments in regards to a text amendment and it being a rezoning issue, and I had to rethink about the position I was taking, because he was correct in what that was all about. And so, with that being said, that's all this is. And it still has a venting process for the public to come in and express themselves, just like you're doing right now. The one thing I do really appreciate from all of this is the involvement that's come out of the woodworks. I personally have a subdivision that's coming across from me, and I live in a rural area. And it's been frustrating to me to see that high density coming into my neighborhood, especially when I'm frustrated with all the commercial and retail that we don't have in the Santan Valley area. I took my grandson to get a, what's that, Panda Express. And while there, I got the fortune cookie. I don't know how many of you look at those. But I opened it up, and here's the story. And the fortune cookie, and the fortune said, sudden changes in plans is going to test your adaptability. And so I started to think about that because, I'm aging and everything else and everything of that. And so it's always going to test us in our adaptability. But with this right here, I see the importance of it and the value that it brings. What we do with that amendment, if we add some of the things that we're talking about here, I'm not opposed to that, but I'm in favor of this particular item. That's me personally.
Okay, thank you. So I want to comment on my position, and I just want to kind of go back. If there's been one thing that I've been critical of as an elected official for the last 18 years, it's been that we don't sell enough state trust land. And I've been very critical every time at every elected position I've held, because I've always felt like there has never been a desire to really market or push or create a pathway for people to be able to use those lands. And I have been approached by people saying, why doesn't the state sell more land? Why doesn't the state take advantage of some of this stuff? So I have experienced that side of things over the years. And it changed about 3 or 4 years ago. The state trust lands have taken a little bit different approach to this and are coming up with ways that make it more appealing to go ahead and look forward to buying a piece of state trust land. If state trust land thinks that having this tool in the toolbox is an advantage to help market and sell some of those state lands, I'm not going to turn away from it, because I have been critical of them not being able to sell lands when I think they should. So that's my, I try to stay consistent. I've always been consistent about how the state manages that department, and I've been critical of it. If they've come forth with this idea, and I think it is a good idea, I'm going to support it. So that's where I stand, and I applaud the department for being innovative and coming up with new ideas on how to market their product, their land, and that's my position.
So if we did go a couple more 100 feet, but down the road, some company needed those few 100 feet back, a future board could give a special use permit, right? This is just a template that would be?
Well, I'll let legal get into that.
Supervisor Surdy, Chairman, that would come through when they do the actual platting of the property and so forth, which is, you know, the next step when they start talking about bringing a project or whatever you may be building on this designated piece of property. That's part of the give and take after you find out what's going there, what's the intensity, what's the traffic patterns, what's the roadways and stuff of that you could then explore those type of things. I'm not sure a special use permit would be the exact one that would apply on such a thing, because it's going to depend on what specific change is being requested. But it couldn't deviate significantly from what you have, what you approve, that's what's allowed as a use there.
And I should have asked this when the state land was up there. So the 660 feet or the 1,000 feet or whatever, that would be for a building? Could a parking lot come right up against in spite of the 660 feet? Because that would not be...
I'm going to allow the state land to kind of respond to that. I think, again, we're drilling down into a portion that isn't even part of the text amendment, but go ahead.
Mr. Chairman and Supervisors, I think it would be helpful to have that language back on the screen that we're all focused on. Thank you. It would be, I think, 2 slides from there. Yep. Here we go. Okay, so to address Supervisor Surdy's question about could we reduce it later if you need it back. So this is the struggle that we had in creating this buffer to begin with, because we're saying as a baseline, it is impossible to provide a industrial use within 660 feet of a residential use in this framework, existing platted single residence subdivision. And the discussion has been, we can add to it, but we cannot subtract from it without a text amendment, unless we build in another section of this ordinance that allows for a reduction to that buffer if certain specific criteria are established. So that's the difficulty in adding to the buffer by legislation, because we can't go the other direction without providing for the ability to do that in the language, which this text doesn't do today. So the proposal was to establish a buffer that is significant. 3 football fields has been discussed. This is 2 and change. For a limitation on an industrial use. But you're right, there are other uses that could go in that buffer. Again, all subject to that public process and the details of the specific application that would be vetted with staff, and it would have all the framework and the maximum setbacks, the uses, the heights, all of those things packaged together. And you would say, this area of uses, much too close to those homes. We are not comfortable with this proposal. We would prefer a 1,000-foot distance in this area. And that would be up to the applicant to say, okay, or you guys would deny it, potentially. So that's the difficulty in establish this framework, is that we need it to be applicable in the future to undetermined projects today. So the 1,000 feet, if we go to 1,000 feet, the idea was, again, to just have it be specific to this industrial use buffer. But again, other uses can go in between. But a use that is accessory to the industrial would not be able to be permitted there. So the parking area, if it's specific to that industrial use, it would have to be the entirety of the industrial use that is outside of that 660 feet.
every place that's built now has to have water retention. Could it be their retention basin? Could it be their driveway?
So it would be an interpretation of what is the industrial use campus. And if that water retention was for a larger project, if there were other retail or commercial uses or residential uses, and it was a common retention area, my assumption is that staff would measure that buffer potentially from any number of places within that retention area because it's serving a whole. If it is specific to a parcel that is designated for industrial and it is separate and apart, like maybe separated by a street, then it's going to have to be something that's analyzed at the time. But to your point, there are other non-residential, there are exterior uses from the building that will be components of a residential use that will create an additional distance from this buffer.
Because if you look around, a lot of water retention areas are your soccer fields and your get-together places that become common areas for other neighbors to use. So, thank you.
Exactly. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Board's pleasure.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we approve zoning ordinance number 2021 PZ-C-004-21, the text amendment request from the Arizona State Land Department, as written.
As written. Is there a second? Dies for lack of a second. Do I have another motion?
I would move, Mr. Chair, that we accept it with the addition of the clause of the, what was it, under 20,000 square foot?
The one with the 1,000?
With the 1,000 foot buffer if the homes are, the lots are 20,000 and under. Acceptable.
I think we got
Mr. Chairman,
the language guy coming up.
Yep, exactly.
We're
gonna see if the
English
language.
teachers here. Yes.
We have captured the language that
Make
is
sure we've captured
satisfactory
it correctly.
so that you have an accurate motion to vote on.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Alan Quist of the Pinal County Attorney's Office. I did consult with state land, and if that is the proposed motion, I did put together some language that you might be able to review and, if you wish, incorporate as part of your.
If it's not in doctor writing, I can read it. Lawyer writing. Oh, yeah. Thank you. All right. I would like to make that motion. Let's see, that to approve, let's see, zoning ordinance number 2021-PZ-C-004-21, text amendment, with the addition of or 1,000, at the end, remove the period and add or 1,000 foot if the existing residential use or platted subdivision is zoned for lots less than 20,000 square feet, period.
Mr. Chairman, if you could please reference the specific section. It should be in the note.
Oh, you want, okay, go to the top. Okay, read from the top. Okay. Amend again. What I said.
This is a motion, everybody.
This is a motion, yes. So this is a motion to approve zoning ordinance number 2021-PZ-C-004-21, text amendment. Also at the end of the section 2.360.030E, the final period will be replaced with a comma, and the following language will be added. Quote, or 1,000 feet if the existing residential use or platted subdivision is zoned for lots less than 20,000 square feet, period. Thank you, Mr. Quist. That's fine. That's my motion.
So can I get a clarification on what that language would do? That would be, everything would be the same except we're adding 340 feet to the buffer? Even though buffer's not a good word?
That is correct, but only in certain development areas. And I can't believe it was 20,000 square feet, I think, only applies in those situations.
Or less.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I'd like to make an amendment.
Okay.
That
To the motion?
A motion, excuse me, amendment to the motion, that the minimum size for the minimum number of acreage would be 1,000 rather than 2,000.
Friendly amendment? Good with that?
I'm good with that.
And I do have proposed language for that as well. If
Oh,
that one, it's prepared. It's also on that sheet.
Oh, is it? Oh.
Piece of- Don't lose that paper.
No, don't lose the paper. The amended version also in section 2.30 or 360.030A, where reference to 2,000 contiguous acres is made, the number 2,000 shall be modified to 1,000. Is that acceptable, Mr. Keller?
Supervisor Kavanaugh, does that capture your intent as far as the friendly amendment?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Everybody clear? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, public.
Mr. Chairman, before we move on, I would just like to clarify with the clerk of the board that she has captured all of those amendment and the friendly amendment to the amendment.
As long as I can get that piece of paper that Supervisor McClure has,
I will.
for the record.
I'll send my courier.
Okay, let's come to order here. We still have a meeting.
I guess I've been accused of being a Democrat before.
I was going to move to continue.
All right. Good to go?
Move it forward.
Okay, I believe we're on item number 8, which originally I was told to withdraw, and now I'm told not to. So,
Sorry, Chairman.
Authorizing,
Andy Smith, Public Works Director for Pinal County.
Sure.
Yes, we originally wanted you to pull this.
can we close those doors or ask those people to calm down out there?
Like our state land representative, she's not going to go out that door.
Thank you.
As you may remember, that Representative Cook identified $4 million from appropriations from the State General Fund for doing a Tier 2 environmental analysis study for the next phase of the North-South study. Excuse me. Let me back up. The North-South study is basically that highway that we've been talking about for since 2000 probably, from US 60 all the way down just west of Gold Canyon area, south to just southeast of Eloy. And it's basically a 50-mile section of roadway that ADOT has been studying, and we finally got to the record of decision, what they call a ROD, and that was just formally announced within the last couple of days. At the time, Representative Cook had appropriated some money. It was $4 million for the North-South Corridor study, which at the time, initially we were told by ADOT that we would be able to take the lead on that, but the Attorney General's office has dictated something otherwise, and so now ADOT will take the lead since it is a state highway. So they will be in control of the particular study effort. And that's why we had agendized this, because we were under the impression that we were going to be taking the lead and we wouldn't need to do this resolution. However, that has changed since Monday, so that's why you're now being asked to sign the resolution so that they will participate and we will be an integral partner within that study effort going forward.
We got that? How fast things can change. So, all right. Any other questions? I'm just happy we're getting a study done.
Amen.
All right. Board's pleasure.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the authorization of the chairman of the board of supervisors to sign the programmatic agreement among the Arizona Department of Transportation Advisory Council and Historic Preservation and the Arizona State Historic Preservation Office regarding the North-South Corridor Study, Tier 1 EIS, and Interstate 10 to U.S. Route 60. Project number is STP 999-A365X, and as written.
Any other questions? I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it.
I like the X at the end. That makes it really cool.
Okay, brings us to item number 9, resolution approving pending industrial development.
Chairman Miller, Board of Supervisors, if I may. I'm John Fries. I'm with the law firm of Riley, Carlock, and Applewhite. We represent the Pinal County IDA. We have a bond issue before you for the Green Gas Partners project in Stanfield. This is a biofuel plant that I think some of you have visited in the past. And by the way, you're welcome to visit in the future. We have a representative of Equilibrium who is the manager with us today from Portland. And he will be very happy to schedule a tour if any of you would like to see the facility. To capture the green gas, it's then pumped into the line, the gas line that's next to the property. It's shipped, and British Petroleum buys that natural gas and uses it for, sells it to vehicles that use natural gas in airports and public facilities like that. The IDA is a conduit lender. We don't take any responsibility for the payment of the bonds that are issued. Those are paid simply from the revenues of the project, so neither the IDA nor the county has any responsibility financially for the project. In 2018, the board approved the issuance of $60 million of bonds to start the project. They now need some additional capital and asked to approve a bond issue of not to exceed $90 million. It probably will not come out that high when they finally total up the numbers, but they will be pumping in another 10 or 12 or more $1 million into the project to help refine their procedures and improve their production. And we're here to answer any questions the board may have. We would ask for your consideration and approval of the resolution today.
Okay, any questions? Supervisor Kavanaugh.
Did I hear you say they need $12 million, but we're approving a bond issuance of not more than $90 million?
Yes, there's two principal components of what they're doing. There's $60 million in bonds that are already outstanding. With this new bond issue, most of the money will go to exchange those bonds for the new bonds. And I believe it will result in interest savings based on just the market forces. And then additional capital infusion that will help to streamline the project. And I will point out that, as I mentioned in my papers to you, there's already been about a $62 million equity investment into this project on top of the bond financing. The bonds will be sold by Goldman Sachs. They'll be in $100,000 denominations. They'll be sold to accredited investors or institutional investors, so it won't be the small moms and pops that are buying these, but will be placed probably with large institutions.
Okay. You good with that, Mr. Supervisor Kavanaugh?
Yes.
Okay. Anybody else? Any questions? Well, I did tour it when it was brand new, but I'd like to maybe go out there again at some point, and we'll make arrangements for that. So
anytime we'll get it set up.
Yeah. So it's fascinating.
It's a very fascinating project, and it's interesting to see.
Yeah, to see. So, okay.
Thank you.
Board's pleasure.
Before I make that motion, Mr. Chair, I'd recommend that anybody that hasn't been out there to go, and any of our, we've got 3 new board members, I think it'd be very educational to go and take a tour of that. So with that, I'd like to make a motion that we approve resolution number 082521-IDA, which will approve the proceedings of the Industrial Development Authority of the County of Pinal for the issuance of its solid waste disposal facilities revenue bonds in the amount not to exceed $90 million.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay.
Mr. Chairman, mine will be a nay, as I don't understand enough
Okay.
about the project.
That's fine. So 4-1. All right, item number 10. Discussion of revision to the pay structure and salary assigned to Pinal County Sheriff's Office. Mr. Thomas.
Chairman, Supervisors, the sheriff will be in momentarily. He is on a break, and he's going to speak. This went faster than he anticipated because we were in the overflow room.
He's disgusting. Sad accent.
If it's at the concert, they usually have comedians come out,
Probably
out in between.
Get a stand-up guy.
Mr. Chairman, Supervisors, thank you. Appreciate the time today. I know you guys it's been running long today, so I want to try to make this as succinct as possible. We're here today. A few years ago when the board approved raises for our deputies, they also talked about the county HR, talked about addressing every 2 years, looking at a market survey to see how competitive we were on the market. We did that. We also were able to take into the competitors that we're dealing with on the market. We were able to bring in Queen Creek, Mesa, Tempe, Scottsdale, Phoenix, I think. I don't know if Scottsdale's on there. Why this is important is because in the past we have always compared to agencies we're not losing people to. Supervisors, do you have any of these sheets, forms?
I do.
Some of you may.
Print my packet.
They're attached to the packet. Yeah. If you'll look at the bottom 5 or 6 agencies that we're looking on, if we look at, it looks like this. Market Study Sworn.
Actually.
Yes.
You had it there. Yeah.
So one of the reasons why this is so important to us is we're at a very difficult time for law enforcement. We have a mainstream media that is biased towards law enforcement. We have a federal government whose rhetoric and policies continue to undermine the rule of law and law enforcement. We have deputies who consistently came to work and responded to calls all through 2020, jeopardizing taking whatever pandemic that we were uncertain about at the time home to their families. And they did that many times understaffed because a lot of guys were on mandatory quarantines. The jail, we were understaffed by almost 18%, and they consistently did their job even though we had to broaden their responsibilities because of COVID. They have consistently came to work and done this job despite where we're at as a society as it relates to law enforcement. So what we wanted to do was really take a look at how we could not only retain those, we don't want to continue to lose them, but also make it attractive for hiring. And in particular, we'd love to target a lot of the laterals out there. And pay becomes one of the major issues that we deal with when we're trying to hire laterals. But if you look at this, really what becomes of importance are basically from the town of Queen Creek down. If you go up from there, I don't know that we've ever lost anybody, at least in my tenure. I don't know that we've lost any other of our deputies to any one of those agencies. However, we have lost to Queen Creek, Mesa, Gilbert, Tempe, Phoenix, Chandler. And so those are the pay comparators that to us are the most important to look at. If we could go to the next one, we'll just take real quick. We'll look at we did the market study for sergeants, lieutenants, and captains. And I want to address these here really quick. I'm going to come back to that. What we've done is the pay comparison. If you'll look at, can you pull up this main sheet that looks like
Sheriff, you didn't have Pinal County on there. What's our minimum?
We have it on,
According
we
to
do have it on one of the sheets.
52,433 looks
So
like.
our minimum starts right now for deputy is at 51 currently. You're probably, Mr. Supervisor, or Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Kavanaugh, you're probably looking at our proposal. We are proposing a 2.5% roughly for increase. However, I'm here as your sheriff to challenge that you would maybe look at more than that. This 2%, and I'll tell you why. Look at this is what's proposed at the top. For deputy, if they are on 11 years, they come in at 68,000. That is a few thousand above the average midpoint for all of the other agencies taken into consideration. When you go to sergeant, our top out pay, which meaning if they stand out, that is at the midpoint for all of the other agencies. Lieutenant and captain are both very much below the midpoint, not the high point, the midpoint for all the other agencies taken into consideration. And this is with the proposed changes. So we're proposing 2.5. We're not here to vote on anything today. My hope is that you would consider being a little bit more aggressive, maybe take a look at the budget and be a little bit more aggressive. This proposal, we budgeted for $310,000. This would take us to 444, I think, which gives it's $104,000 more than what we budgeted for at 2.5%. If we were to look at 5%, it would probably put us at $208,000 above what we budgeted for. Now, with the detention comes in at $57,000 over what we budgeted for. If we were to double that, it would take us to about $114,000 for above what we budgeted for. So those are some of that's what I would like you to take into consideration today. We are very grateful for the opportunity to even be looking at 2.5%. But I can tell you with inflation, with the way the market is, Phoenix today I heard is offering a $7,500 sign-on bonus. And their top out is much higher than ours. There are valley agencies talking about making changes as it relates to mandating vaccines. I have had no less than 15 phone calls. However, that pay, the discrepancy in the pay is so significant. We're talking $20,000+ difference. It makes it difficult for us to attract those laterals into our agency. Though this would help, it does not get us to where we need to be or where we would like to be. We are trying to take it incrementally so that we don't put too much of a strain on the county budget. And so this is what the proposal was. I would hope that you would look at it and see the value of the services that these deputies and detention officers provide to the county. Our responsibility as county government is first and foremost public safety, always, and the primary responsibility of government. And being able to maintain those employees here at the county and showing them the appreciation, which you have so graciously done in the past, would go a long way. The other thing we'd like to propose that we think would also have a significant impact on us immediately on hiring. When we did the raises a couple years ago, what we did is we took into consideration people's experience at other agencies. But we did that on halftime, which meant that if you had 10 years experience, we gave you 5 years on the pay scale. What we are asking is that we can make an immediate change and go to 1-for-1, where if these deputies or if these officers have 10 years experience at another agency, we are bringing them in at a step 10 on the pay scale, and that would make a significant impact on our ability to bridge that gap of what they may be making in these other agencies to what they would be making here. We have worked very hard, and we are very proud of the work environment we have created where people want to come work here. And that is large in part to the county supervisors, and also the other county government personnel. have made that to where this is a desirable place to work. But money still does come into play when you're taking a huge pay cut. So we're trying to find ways that we can have an immediate impact on that, and one of those ways would be to change it from halftime to 1-for-1. And then also, hopefully, you would look at it and see if maybe we could be a little bit more aggressive than the 2.5% and maybe try to close that gap a little bit. I don't know. Did they have that other sheet? I just want to touch on one more thing. This one. I'm going to bring up one more page. This one here. If you look at it, let's go down to the bottom right-hand corner. As it relates to deputies, we are still 4.7% below the midpoint at the market, and that's including all those other agencies that we don't lose anybody to, which have probably significantly brought down that average. If we were just to compare it to the agencies we are losing them to, it would be much higher. The next is for sergeants, we're 6.2 below the market for midpoint, 7.3 for lieutenants, and 9.5. This has an effect on who wants to promote and why the benefit of promoting when we're so far below the market. On the jail, I don't know if the detention, I'll just read these off real quick. On the detention, we do much better. We're 1.7 actually above the midpoint on the market value for our detention officers. For sergeants, we're 1.19% below. For sergeants, we jump all the way to 7% below the midpoint market. And then we go down as high as 14% below the market for our captains in the jail as well. Our goal is to actually improve this to a point where we're not constantly fighting so far from behind. To get it a little closer, we understand that this is a challenge, but I'll tell you the market is so difficult, so challenging. Mesa, Tempe, those agencies typically used to have 2,000 people apply for a testing. All of us are lucky to get 50 to 100 to show up for a testing. We're probably all fishing from the same pond as well. So anything that we can do as a county to kind of bridge that, get a little bit closer, keep the employees that we currently have, and help bring in laterals, in particular from other agencies, will give us a huge advantage for people that want to actually just come work here. It helps us bridge that financial gap a little bit. So with that, I'll open it up for questions.
Any questions of the sheriff? Supervisor Kavanaugh.
Mr. Chairman, Sheriff Lamb, are you still short staff, and what's the number?
Supervisor Miller, our Chairman Miller, Supervisor Kavanaugh, we are still short. We were 22 down on sworn because you so graciously granted us 10 more positions. We are going to be 18 down here in the next week. So we're still 18 down, but if you do that, that's close to 10% of our staffing.
And so you're 18 down, including you filled the 10 positions that we allocated?
No, that includes the 10 positions that were just added. Without those, we would have been 8 down. Okay. Now we're 18 down. On the jail, I believe we are still around 18. We're also 18 in the jail as well. So we have some work to do. We've been successful. We're trying some other creative things to help streamline the hiring process for us, to try to get these folks in the door a little bit quicker, a little bit easier, capture their information quicker. So we're excited about that, and we think that'll be successful as well.
And I think, Sheriff Lamb, if I saw it correctly yesterday, inflation for this year is at a minimum going to be 5.4%. So my recommendation might be 5.4% or better based on the positions. And you threw some numbers out, and the differences between the increase, and I didn't know if that included EREs, or were you talking salary only figures in the budget increase, or have you calculated that out, or what?
Chairman Miller, Supervisor Kavanaugh, my understanding is the 2.5 is on the pay scale. So it's going to bump everything up 2.5% on the pay scale. We budgeted for $310,000 in changes on that pay scale. What we're proposing will increase that by $104,000. What I would love for the board to request was us come back a little bit more aggressively, and we can get those numbers for you. But if we doubled it, we'd be up around $210,000 above what we budgeted for, which you already approved. There will be an impact to the budget should we go to a 1-for-1 on the experience. We would have to go back and make the changes on the pay scales for those who did come over. And then anybody who comes over, it's obviously not an immediate impact, but anybody that does come over would be paid, they would go higher on the pay scale than they normally would have without that.
Okay.
And Angie from the budget office is probably going to kill me because I...
Okay.
Well, I see Angie back there. I might have a question.
Is she steaming? I don't want to look back there.
Yeah.
I don't want to look back.
And Sheriff, at a recent meeting, you said among those 10 officers, the bulk of those, you said a majority to the crowd would be stationed in the Copper Corridor. Are those folks off of training yet? Have you stationed additional officers in the Copper Corridor? Because Mammoth, San Manuel, they're all suffering for need of law enforcement.
Chairman Miller, Supervisor Kavanaugh, I don't know that I've said that. I know a lot of them go to Santan Valley, but there will be an increase in the amount of people going up to the Copper Corridor as well. I think what I was talking about is per capita, we already have more deputies in the Copper Corridor than we actually do in the Santan Valley or other areas. We are trying to pair that up a little bit so we have more bodies. Our goal is we recognize there is a need for more bodies in the Copper Corridor, and that is definitely one of the places of high priority for us. A lot of those are going to be primarily going to the Santan Valley area. During this last year, it is not uncommon for there to only be 5 deputies in the Santan Valley area covering 130,000 people, or roughly approximately 130,000 people. If you do the numbers, that's not where we want to be. So yes, if I misspoke there,
well, it was in a meeting. Yeah, someone asked you, and they said how many will come to the area, and they asked me, and I pointed to you, and you said the majority of them will come to that area. And I have a person who's asked that specific question, so I'm addressing that to you.
We will address it, and we do address those areas as it relates. We look at all the statistics, and we'll make sure that we have more bodies there. Some of those bodies are going there, but where are the greatest?
Officer safety issue too, I think.
Correct. It's an officer safety, just because of the expansiveness of that area as well. The lion's share is much needed statistically wise, manpower wise, is going to be in the Santan Valley area of the county.
Should have had you do the census.
I have a short question.
Sure.
Does jail personnel have to do the same academy standards as field?
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Surtee, no, they do not. Currently, they do about an 8 to 10 week program. We were doing our own academy. However, we've since gone back to using, I believe, an academy down in Tucson for them. So it is significantly, it's about half of what a deputy has to go through.
Thanks.
Mr. Chairman, Supervisors, one of the big things about laterals is there's an immediate impact in our staffing levels. If we're able to bring in laterals, which where we're at in America has opened the door for us to really bring a lot of laterals in. And those laterals are a huge benefit because they bring experience that we didn't pay for. They are able to hit the road and typically are on their own within 4 to 6 weeks, as opposed to close to a year when you hire somebody new. And that's gambling that they make it through all the steps to get to that point. So it's a real benefit and a real opportunity to capture some of those lateral deputies or officers wanting to come work here. and take advantage of the work we've done to make this a desirable place to come and work.
Any other questions? I do have a question for Angie, if I can call upon her to. Seeing my numbers.
Good afternoon, Angie Woods, Director of Budget.
Thank you, Angie. Just real quick, I mean, obviously this would require a budget amendment. And I guess, how long would it take you to crunch the numbers as far as increase at 2.5%, 5%, and EREs, and what really is the bottom line number that we would have to amend the budget by? And then is there a way, I mean, there's no way of knowing how many would be one for one, although I don't think it's a bad idea. I think it's a good idea. But we'd probably have to throw some kind of a number at that to understand what that might have an effect on the budget as well.
Chairman, it would take my staff, we've already built a model. What we would need to do is go back and figure out what that new pay scale would be and how that affects each of the employees. And you know, that may take us a week or two to do, so we could potentially have an agenda item on the schedule to amend the budget and to approve a new pay scale within a month, I would think, within a month.
Okay. I really like to know what the number is. That's me personally, because I think we just have to look at it in totality. To me, sure. I think it's important, and I'm in support of trying to get some parity to our officers, and our country really is in a mess with law enforcement, and I want to project the idea that we do support our law enforcement officers fully. So, but I again am concerned about the number. That's just my thoughts. Does anybody have any questions for Angie, other than me?
Chairman Miller, if I could make one more comment.
Sure.
Some of the change, we would need to look at those that we place into the plan initially because of that halftime. So we would want to, in addition, analyze what that additional cost, what that would be, because it would make the assumption that those that we placed at halftime, we would want to change that again. So that would have an additional cost as well.
See, yeah, there's all those little
Yeah,
nuances that we need to really just make sure we're all squared away on everything.
Yeah, but with the team that I have, the model that we have, I would say we could do it in a fairly short amount of time.
Okay. I don't know what the rest of the board thinks about that. I'm sorry, I should be more formal, Ms. Woods.
Thank you, Chairman.
I think it's a great idea.
What's that?
I think that's a great idea. I'd like to look.
I mean, yeah, Sheriff, if we waited to get all the answers, are you okay with that?
Mr. Chairman, Supervisors, yes, because I think that if it allows, I think it gives you some opportunity to look at even a potentially better opportunity for the
Sure.
deputies. Even if it ends up at the 2.5%, my understanding is it would be retroactive anyway. And so therefore they would, for the month maybe, no? Would it?
Probably two. We'd have to look at a pay period.
You're going to get Angie mad at you.
Keep messing around, Sheriff.
Chairman Miller, members of the board, of course, whether or not it's retroactive is ultimately up to your discretion. But the plan would be in September, beginning September 19th, is when a cadre of your deputies would move to the next step. The step plan is implemented twice a year. So a group would go to their next step. And then when we ultimately do the step plan changes, we would do the adjustments then. And then come April, those that are ready to move, would be my recommendation.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Supervisors, I think that's what I was referring to, is if we go past September and it ends up being past that date, then it might go retroactive to the date that that is set as when they would normally get their increases. So it may be 2 weeks, it may be a small a piece. As it relates to the current laterals, we'd be able to calculate that number out pretty good, and then obviously you don't know what kind of experience you're going to get from future laterals, and so that would have to be a projection.
Okay. So this was for discussion. It was not an action item, so that makes it a little bit easier.
Yeah.
So, any other questions or comments?
I do have one question for Deputy County Supervisor Mary Ellen. So you've heard me ask the sheriff for more deputies in the Copper Corridor and even Saddlebrook, I think, is a part of that district oracle. And under 11251, the supervisors are charged with supervising the official conduct of all county officers and see that the officers faithfully perform their duties and so on, and make reports and present their books for accounts and inspection. I would be for a raise if I could be guaranteed that more officers would be stationed in the Copper Corridor. So is there a provision that you know of that we could write it in where we could demand that the sheriff up the staffing levels there?
Chairman Miller, Supervisor Kavanaugh, the question you're posing, candidly, is the first time I've received such a question in my career. So I'm not positioned to answer that. In my experience, the deployment of officers and the assignment has been under the purview of the elected official of the sheriff and staffing to meet the needs of the constituents. It's certainly in providing the board with a staffing plan and manpower so you're aware of where staffing is. Response times has been a request, in my experience, that's been shared. But I have not had an occasion where commensurate with a staffing or a salary proposal was built-in requirements that assignments be made at certain levels or ratios.
So this might be the first time.
It might be the first time, Supervisor Kavanaugh.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Supervisor Shepard. And under 11251, perhaps that's something we should research because I'd really like to see a higher staffing level for the citizens and officer safety in that area.
And Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Kavanaugh, I think in an effort to avoid a quid pro quo as to withholding a vote for a certain action, I think we would have to just reassure you that our goal is to ensure that we have maximum law enforcement services in those areas. And I would commit to you that we would dedicate more of those resources to that area because we'd finally be fully staffed. Right. Just our full staffing would, in and of itself, would automatically increase the amount of bodies there before we even get to those other 10. So, yes, I could assure you that we would be committed to making sure that the Copper Corridor would have more staffing.
I appreciate that. I've been a sheriff deputy in a rural area, and backups 30 minutes out, it's a bad deal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
okay. Any other questions or comments? Staff, county manager, you got direction there? Okay. Thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, supervisors.
Okay, brings us to item number 11. So I placed this on there, and this has been some discussion with legal and the county manager's office. I want everybody to know that I do not control the agenda. I am briefed on the agenda. I'm presented an agenda. I get people that the staff updates me on things that may be coming down the pike that'll be on the agenda. That's, as the chair, they just try to keep you abreast of what's going on. But I thought, and this I've seen in other entities, and I think it's something that maybe we should go ahead and start practicing here. If any of you have something that you want on an agenda, a report, or even just a discussion topic, or a better understanding of a department, or anything, relay it to me and or the county manager's office, and we'll be glad to put it on. I want everybody to understand that that future agenda items can be added, and I'm willing to allow that to happen on a regular basis. I want everybody to be informed. I probably am a little lax because I have been here for 8 years, and I take things a little bit for granted, maybe, and I shouldn't. The three new supervisors haven't seen everything I have, so and I forget about that, and I want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to get a better understanding of the procedures and the policies and methods that we use here in Pinal County. So I offer that to any of you. As Supervisor Surtee brought up earlier today, that's a classic example of something that we can have our departments prepare something and put on the agenda going forward. Any other comments, or Counselor? Because you and I talked about this.
Supervisor Chairman, the idea behind this topic was so that it would be a permanent placeholder at the end of the board's meetings before any executive session item, so that maybe if something has come up today or something that a board member has been thinking about that they'd like a report on, or they'd like a briefing on, and they'd like it done, in an open discussion, or they want an action item on an item, that they could present it when we get to this item and request the chairman and the county manager to work with the clerk's item to find an appropriate agenda date and or speaker, or create the motion and so forth, and work with that supervisor to make sure that it does get on a future agenda and that we have the right people here to speak about it.
Correct. Yes. So
what I'm hearing is at the end of our board meeting, making that an agenda item that we can actually come in and say we would like further discussions on this or whatever.
Right.
Okay. All right. Just so I'm clear on that. Okay. I like that.
Everybody good with that? And that way, and depending on the complexity of it, we'll get it on an agenda as soon as we can. But I want everybody to understand that this process that we have here is open to everyone on the board. So, anyway, okay.
Supervisor Chairman, before we move off that topic, because we have this item on here today, discussion of future items, I believe Mr. Surtee, Supervisor Surtee, was making a request earlier that was deferred to now, and if I understood the request, he was looking for a report in the future from the Sheriff's Office regarding his applicability or his compliance with some of the requirements that were in HUD documents, I believe. Is that correct?
Yes, report/opinion.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we'll be glad to put something together on that and put it on a future agenda.
So we would then work with the county manager and the clerk to get that and coordinate with the sheriff, obviously, to get something on a future agenda for that then.
Right.
While we're on this subject regarding calls to the public, even if we're not called out by name, if someone has something without interacting with the public, is there any way that anybody can address things? Let's say somebody
I think that's someone. That's pretty hard.
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Surtee, only if the item has been agendaized and that a public member is then speaking on it, can we have that exchange. The only other time that you can exchange, as the chairman did express today, was if a specific board member is called out, that board member can go ahead and respond to that individual, because at times it tends to be an attack on someone's character, and you have the ability at that point in time to refute that. But it's in limited circumstances. Excuse me.
Somebody's bringing something to our attention, like somebody's killing all the pigeons in a certain area. Is there anything the county can do? And we would then say, county manager, can you look into this?
Well,
something like that.
At that public comment, we can do that even.
Absolutely. During public comment, you can always direct the county manager to look into it and report back to you. Now, if you want a full report before the board in open session, item number 11 would be a time period you would do that. I've received requests from my constituents that would like more information on how the county does ABC. I'd like to have that department director, come and do a presentation for us. That would be a way to handle those.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
And concerning agenda items, Mr. Chairman, so we've had a discussion about the completeness of items that are presented. So even with concerning this meeting, there have been items, they had pictures from code enforcement and the target tax issue had very little information attached. We had to go find the information. So I think perhaps the next agenda item, the first agenda item I would ask for is setting a date certain prior to the meeting that all attachments will be included, because we actually read this stuff. So it was a 309-page document with 1,000 pages of additional law, federal law we had to go through to look at it. So I think that we should establish a date certain when all the drop dead date, we'll call it, for all the attachments.
For all the attachments. Okay. Well, I'll work with the clerk on that and the county manager.
Chairman, Supervisor Kavanaugh, so right now we do have a date set for attachments, but the backup material is based upon what the department deems necessary for the board in order to make a decision. Now, if you're asking for additional information outside of what is already attached, then if it is something that we are waiting on the board view, what we will do is, in parentheses, we will state that additional attachments are forthcoming, so that you and your staff and everyone is made aware that we do not have all the attachments. But typically, all attachments are due at the time that they are submitting the actual agenda item.
Okay. Well, I'm going to pick on code enforcement then, because we received just 3 pictures, I think, on each of those items. And it's difficult to research, contact folks based on 3 pictures. So perhaps we need to have an education series on what is necessary for the board to be properly prepared. You don't even know what question to ask if you just have some pictures.
Right.
So that's something maybe we should
That
look
might
into.
be a future agenda item that we could bring code enforcement in and talk about what you as a board member are expecting for their action items.
Well, I'm picking on code enforcement, but our county attorney's office had a summary of the tax item with no background information so that we could study the issue and have a better understanding to respond to the public. So I think it's countywide.
Okay. All right. Anything else? Do I have a motion to go into exec session?
Make a motion that we move to executive session.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Let's have it. We're going into exec session, and we have nothing else to vote on. So. Can I have a second?
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Nay? Oh, didn't say nay. I said aye. This meeting's adjourned.